Chapter 1035. Battle Emperor. Yi Qinghan's body trembled. His expression did not change, but a trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes. He knew that this voice transmission was likely to be true. After all, it was not a big deal for someone who could build such a powerful restriction like the Sealed God Valley to build such a protective shield. Battle Emperor claimed to be the best in the immortal world in terms of restrictions. As for the rumors about Battle Emperor's strength, Yi Qinghan was also skeptical. Because the third layer of the seal on the black stone in his divine crystal could only be unlocked when the Battle Emperor was at the 9th grade. And from his tone, 9th grade was nothing. This meant that Battle Emperor's strength was definitely high when he was alive. It was not impossible that he was stronger than the Star Monarch. This was the first time Yi Qinghan heard that a dead person's soul could survive. A trace of Battle Emperor's soul was still in his divine crystal. He even said that he would meet him after he unlocked the third layer of the seal. What if he needed 1,000,000 years to reach the 9th grade? Battle Emperor's strength was unfathomable. However, the Star Monarch was likely a 9th grade supreme martial artist. If he was stronger than a 9th grade supreme martial artist, what kind of realm was that? Yi Qinghan did not dare to imagine. What's wrong, little Han? Jita sensed Yi Qinghan's strangeness. She revealed a puzzled expression and sent a voice transmission. Have you heard of this Battle Emperor? Yi Qinghan nodded and sent a voice transmission back. The Sealed God Valley was built by this Battle Emperor. The restriction of the Sealed God Valley can suppress a venerable. Unfortunately, he has passed away. This was the first time Yi Qinghan told someone about the story of Battle Emperor. If Lord Devour had asked, Yi Qinghan would have selectively told her some of the story. Unfortunately, Lord Devour did not ask. After Gid heard this, a strange look flashed in his eyes. He had an expression that said, "So that's how it is." Yi Qinghan did not continue, and Jita did not continue to ask. Moreover, this information would not be spread out. Since Battle Emperor was the master of the Sealed God Valley, this voice transmission was very real. In other words, the Battle Emperor was related to the Battle God Pavilion, which meant that he was related to the Star Monarch. If this matter were to spread to the Battle God Pavilion, it would be very disadvantageous to Yi Qinghan. The two stopped talking and continued to investigate the situation on the Supreme Island. Hundreds of millions of experts were also excitedly observing the battle in the distance, although they couldn't find anything. Some people even took out fine wine and spiritual fruits from their space rings, as if they were going to watch a good show from the sidelines. It was a different situation on Supreme Island. The Star Army and the residents on the island all raised their heads and stared at the demonic creatures that were as dense as locusts on the colorful shield with grave and aggrieved expressions. The Supreme Island was known as the Sacred Island in the God world. Ever since the Battle God Pavilion was established on Paragon Island had always been the sacred island in the hearts of the battle gods. Then, this person became the pavilion master of the Battle God Pavilion. After the Sovereign of Stars unified the Starry Sea became the overlord of the immortal world. Usually, it was difficult for ordinary 5th grade or 6th grade war gods to come to the Supreme Island to take a look, let alone be attacked. Today, the Star Army of billions of people from the Starry Sea was forced to stay on the Sacred Island. Not only were the residents of the Starry Sea slaughtered by the demonic creatures, but they were also attacked on the Sacred Island. It was a great humiliation. Moreover, many of the Star Army's relatives were on the island in the Starry Sea. Although Li Kong and the rest had blocked the news, they knew that they were definitely in trouble. In an instant, the eyes of countless Star Army soldiers were bloodshot. They were filled with murderous intent, as if they were going to riot at any time. If it wasn't for Li Kong's repeated orders, and if it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't get out of the shield, they would have gone out to fight with the demons. In the City Lord's residence, which was also the main hall of the Battle God Pavilion, the dozens of venerables gathered again. Li Kong's eyelids were still drooping, like a huge mountain, entrenched in the huge lion chair at the top. "Sir, what should we do? If we allow these bastards to continue attacking, the shield will be broken sooner or later. By then, With so many Azura kings attacking at the same time, the Supreme Island will be razed to the ground. Qingshan, Jita, those bastards are watching the show from afar. When the sovereign comes out of seclusion, we'll definitely teach them a lesson. Inkue, that ingrate. He used to treat the sovereign like a grandson, but now he's watching the show from afar too? Preposterous. Preposterous. Sir, give the order. Issue the battle god order and summon the war gods of the realm of divinity to come and save the sacred island. Sir, hurry up and ask the sovereign to come out of seclusion and lead us to kill all these despicable creatures that are desecrating the sacred island. The hall was in a state of panic. Countless venerables stood up and spoke to Li Kong anxiously. Of course, there were also a few people who remained silent. Their expressions could not be seen, but they would occasionally lower their heads, revealing looks of disdain and shame. They were all ashamed of the shameless words of these people. Idiots, all of you shut up. Li Kong, who was sitting on the seat of honor, finally raised his head, revealing a slit in his eyes. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, sending chills down one's spine. Li Kong looked at the dozen venerables who spoke just now and was incomparably furious. The fat all over his body wriggled, looking very frightening. These idiots did not understand the situation outside, and yet they dared to insult Qing Shan and the others? Did their brains get caught in a door? Qing Shan brought all the sovereigns and the armies of the various continents and stood outside the Supreme Island to watch the show. Needless to say, the demons in the Star Sea had already been cleared. If they really wanted to watch the show, why didn't they do it in their own territory? Why did they have to come here to watch the show? Although Yi Qinghan, whom Li Kong hated the most, was among the crowd outside. But Li Kong still felt that these idiots were too ill-mannered. If these words were to spread, the Star Sea would become the public enemy of the realm of gods. Issue the war god order? This was a suggestion made by people who were even more stupid than low-level demonic beasts. Didn't they see the snowflakes of messages from the various pavilions not long ago? This was the most critical time since the establishment of the God of War Pavilion. Countless war gods' faith in the God of War Pavilion was starting to waver. Issue the war god order now, and ask them to save the Supreme Island? The God of War Pavilion, which had been established for thousands of years, would probably become history once this order was issued. Li Kong's furious voice instantly silenced everyone in the hall. Although Li Fei of the Li family had died and the green hell armor had been smashed by Yi Qinghan, the aura of the number one venerable for so many years was still frightening. Li Kong was also very troubled. The Star Sovereign hated to disturb him for no reason. Because of Yi Qinghan's matter, he had been disturbed several times in the past 1,000 years. Not long ago, he went down to ask for instructions again. Now he was going again. He did not know if the Star Sovereign would tear him apart in his rage. However, if he did not ask for the Star Sovereign's help and allowed these demonic beings to attack, they would all die if the barrier was broken. Even if Qing Shan and the others came to save them, the Supreme Island would definitely be filled with blood. By then, he would also die. After remaining silent for a long time, he finally took out a communication jade talisman. Of course, he was not sending a message to the Star Sovereign. Even if he wanted to, he could not. He was sending a message to Inkue, asking him to tell Lord Qing Shan to help clear out the demons. In the future, when the Star Sovereign came out of seclusion, he would definitely reward him generously and give him countless empty promises. In the end, Inkue did not reply. Lord Qing Shan and the others were still standing outside, watching the show. The demonic army was still attacking nonstop. Although the rainbow barrier could quickly replenish its energy from the heaven and earth yuan qi, the replenishment was not as fast as the destruction. The rainbow light was gradually weakening. Although the weakening was very slow, if it continued, it would definitely break. After more than 20 days, the barrier on the Supreme Island was almost transparent. There was no longer any rainbow light on it. Instead, it was a dim white light, like the white spots on an old man's face. Li Kong finally could not sit still anymore. He was prepared to teleport towards the palace below the Supreme Island. At this moment, He unexpectedly received a message from South Mountain Sovereign in Kuei. After reading it, Li Kong's expression changed. He stood on his tiptoes and cursed. The fat on his body started to shake. He brought dozens of venerables and charged towards the giant teleportation formation on the square. In Kuei's message to Li Kong was instructed by Ice Queen. It was just a short sentence. There is a demon lord hiding in Shura King. If the Star Sovereign doesn't come out, Supreme Island will be wiped out. Chapter 1036. That bastard Inke has completely sided with that living dead woman. He didn't even send us a message beforehand. Quick, go and report to the Devil Monarch. If the Devil Monarch attacks, no one on the island will survive. Li Kong's fat body was like a meatball, but his speed was faster than teleportation. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the unguarded giant teleportation portal on the square. The black triangular stone in his hand shot out. Just as the last venerable entered the teleportation portal, the teleportation light lit up. Countless martial artists on the square looked at the venerables who lost their composure and looked at each other. Then, they looked at the barrier in the sky that was getting thinner. They were extremely nervous, as though the sky was going to collapse. Countless people started trembling. In the giant lava cave thousands of miles below Supreme Island, a beautiful palace was still floating on the lava that was emitting green smoke. It swayed left and right along with the lava, but it still didn't look like it was going to sink. Green flames shot out from the fiery red walls from time to time. Even the air was curled up under the flames. It was obvious how hot the flames were. In midair behind the palace, there was a giant red stone platform with a complicated teleportation portal on it. At this moment, the teleportation portal shone brightly, and a group of people appeared in it. At the front was Li Kong, who was as big as an elephant. The corner of Li Kong's mouth twitched slightly. The origin energy revolved around his body. He could not care less about the green flames that were spewing out from the walls around him. He rushed forward and finally prostrated himself in front of the palace. Just like last time, he prostrated himself on the ground and was extremely respectful. Li Kong requests to see the monarch. After all the venerables prostrated themselves on the ground, Li Kong said in a trembling voice. He closed his eyes tightly and didn't dare to look forward. However, some venerables who had never been here before were probing forward carefully. They knew that this was the place where the Star Monarch went into seclusion. They also knew that there was an entrance in front of the palace. It led to the evil abyss, the most dangerous place in the realm of the gods, and also the most blessed land in the realm of the gods. A huge pressure came over quietly, scaring the venerables who were probing, and they quickly retracted their divine sense, afraid that they would anger this overbearing overlord. A pair of golden eyes stared at the palace silently. There was no sign of life in the eyes, only coldness and arrogance. An emotionless voice resounded. Li Kong, give me a reason why I shouldn't kill you. His voice was emotionless, and there was no killing intent in his eyes. However, the bodies of the 50-odd supremacies began to tremble. They felt as if their souls had fallen into an ice cellar. Every single cell on their fat bodies began to tremble at this moment. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. His lips quivered as he said with difficulty, reporting to the sovereign. More than 2,000 Azura kings have been attacking the barrier for almost a month. The Ice Queen of Green Mountain and most of the sovereigns of the immortal realm are watching the show from outside the island. Inkue sent a message saying that there are devil sovereigns among the devils attacking the island. We really have no other choice but to come and ask for your forgiveness. Forgive me, sovereign. All the supremacies shouted at the same time. They knew very well that if the person in front of them wanted to kill, he wouldn't care about anything. Demon Monarch? The voice of the Star Sovereign drifted over. This time, there was a tinge of emotion in it, but it was full of contempt. After a moment of silence, he didn't say much. However, his eyes suddenly turned and locked onto a white-haired, middle-aged venerable behind Li Kong. Suddenly, a golden light shot out from the pair of golden eyes. Like lightning, it entered the head of the white-haired, middle-aged man. Under everyone's horrified gazes, the venerable's body trembled slightly. He actually flew towards the pair of eyes slowly. However, there was no expression on the venerable's face. Moreover, there were no pupils in his eyes. It was obvious that he was dead. Li Kong's body trembled even more violently. It was hard to imagine a scene where his fat body was trembling nonstop. The venerables behind also noticed this weird situation. Their teeth started to chatter. Killing someone wasn't scary, but killing someone invisibly was unheard of. The white-haired venerable floated into the pair of giant eyes. Then a weird scene happened. The pair of giant eyes actually burrowed into the body. A moment later, a violent aura was released from the venerable's body. The pupilless eyes of the venerable actually started to move. Suddenly, there were two more pupils. Two golden pupils. The Star Sovereign actually forcefully snatched someone else's body. Moreover, in the blink of an eye, he completed this weird technique silently. Li Kong and the rest were dumbfounded. What kind of weird secret technique is this? I've never heard of such a magical secret technique in the ancient times. However, they didn't dare to let out a single fart. They didn't dare to think too much. I haven't appeared for 1,000,000 years. Do you all think that I, Xiong, am dead? Why are you still kneeling? A bunch of trash. The white-haired venerable's pair of golden eyes swept across everyone coldly. Everyone felt their souls tremble, as though they were attacked by an invisible soul skill. Everyone understood that the person in front of them wasn't the venerable from before. He was the Star Sovereign, Xiong. Li Kong's reaction was the fastest. His round body climbed up immediately. He forced a flattering smile on his fat face and followed behind the white-haired middle-aged man. All the venerables behind him heaved a sigh of relief. They looked at the back of the figure that had his spine straight and was like a sharp sword that was unsheathed. They all straightened their spines and rushed towards the teleportation formation. The supreme island sky was still dark. Countless martial artists on the island still had a look of despair on their faces. The barrier in the sky was already as thin as a woman's undergarments. The Azura King's hideous face on the barrier looked like it was about to pounce down and tear them into pieces. Countless people who were kneeling started to stand up and pick up the weapons in their hands. They prayed for a month, but their lord didn't descend. Their chief pavilion master, their sovereign, was still nowhere to be found. The Star Sovereign had been in seclusion for 1,000,000 years. Li Kong had always been the one sending messages. He didn't even appear at such a crucial moment. Most importantly, when the evil demon descended, the Supreme Island ordered everyone to retreat back to the island, allowing the evil demon to ravage the people of the Star Sea. Countless people didn't know if the legendary #1 person in the God Realm was still alive. Was he still protecting the Holy Island and his people? Since the Pavilion Master wasn't around, Li Kong and the rest couldn't be relied on. They could only rely on the weapons in their hands. Supreme Island, 9 Guardians Island, Lord Qingshan and a group of sovereigns stood side by side. All of their faces were extremely solemn. The barrier was about to be broken. If the Star Sovereign still didn't make a move, they would have to. Although they hated the Supreme Island, and some of them even hated it, the people on the island weren't guilty. However, the ordinary people on the island weren't guilty. Most importantly, they couldn't just watch as the alien races killed their own people. Yi Qinghan stood there expressionlessly, but he was constantly sending messages to Lord Devour in private. Not long ago, Lord Devour started sending him messages nonstop, asking about the situation here. Yi Qinghan didn't know why Lord Devour didn't come personally, but he still sent messages to Lord Devour about the situation every day. The communication jade talisman vibrated. Yi Qinghan took a glance and squinted his eyes. There was only one sentence in the message. The Star Sovereign will definitely come. If the situation isn't right, crush the life-saving jade talisman immediately. Remember, Jida's communication jade talisman also vibrated. He took a glance, then turned to look at Yi Qinghan. Both of them nodded. They clearly received the same message. Although they decided to do as Lord Devour said, they were extremely confused. Would the Star Sovereign dare to harm them in front of so many sovereigns? Chapter 1037. Ping! A crisp sound spread across the area. The barrier on Supreme Island shattered, like a bubble under the sun. Countless faces with complicated expressions were revealed underneath. Hiss! Jia! In an instant, the countless Azura kings let out hair-raising cries. The eyes of the fiend devils and devil kings shone with a bright red light, as if they were wolves that had spotted a lone lamb. The Azura king's black and white eyes turned bloodshot. They already had intelligence. They were different from low-level demonic creatures. Their eyes seemed to be able to see through the island of Supreme and see the ancestral fiends in the lava cave below, waiting for them to rescue them. Countless evil creatures swarmed downwards like locusts. There were also countless warriors below who raised the weapons in their hands and flew towards the evil creatures with the determination to die in their eyes. The scene at this moment was like a thunderbolt igniting the underground fire. A black cloud was about to press down from the sky. Below, the Star Army in fiery red armor and the God of War in the God of War's robe rose to the sky like a black and red burning cloud. The scene was extremely shocking. Lord Qing Shan and the countless kings exchanged glances and sighed helplessly. They were prepared to act, although the Star Lords and Devil Lords didn't appear. But they couldn't just watch as the people on Supreme Island die. Wait, Shintu Xiong is coming out. Just as Lord Qing Shan's body turned illusory, and he was prepared to forcefully use a large area of space to freeze the space on the island. The Ice Queen spoke. Qing Shan's mountain-like body solidified once more. The countless kings were shocked, and they looked towards Supreme Island. Yi Qinghan and Jita looked at each other and took out a green jade talisman at the same time. Then they looked at the Supreme Island. Wang! A gigantic teleportation formation on the square lit up at this moment. Along with the light of the teleportation formation, a fiery red radiance could be seen. As the fiery red radiance lit up, the spatial energy of the entire Supreme Island froze. The demon realm creatures that swooped down from the sky and the black cloud froze in the air. Countless Star Army soldiers also maintained the posture of charging upward. Countless Azura kings showed hatred and resentment in their eyes. Although the facial muscles of the Star Army couldn't move, their eyes were shining with ecstasy and devotion. They knew that their chief pavilion master, their king, was here. He didn't give up on his people. Countless divine senses locked onto the dozens of people in the giant teleportation formation on the plaza. In the end, they all locked onto a white-haired middle-aged man in front of Li Kong. Many people knew this white-haired middle-aged man. He was an elder of the War God Pavilion. Although he was an important person in the War God Pavilion, his ranking was much lower than Li Kong's. At this moment, he was standing in front of Li Kong with his hands behind his back, looking at the sky calmly. His pair of fiery red eyes were radiating with light. He was domineering and looked down on the world. Qing Shan and Ice Queen exchanged glances. Both of them knew that the soul in this honorable one was Shintu Xiong, or rather, Shintu Xiong was temporarily controlling this body. That was because they were all too familiar with this gaze. The domineering aura in Star Sovereign's bones couldn't be hidden even if he was parasitizing a low-grade beast. Star Sovereign didn't say anything. He kept his hands behind his back and looked into the sky. There was no emotion in his eyes. It was as if he wasn't facing tens of thousands of high-level demons, and there weren't countless Star Army soldiers around him. He was standing on the peak of a mountain and looking into the endless void. Yi Qinghan's gaze passed through the black mist and looked at the fat Li Kong behind Star Sovereign. A look of hatred flashed in his eyes. Li Kong, without the need for Ethereal Sovereign to explain, he recognized him right away. That was because Li Kong's fat body was famous in the God world. Not only did Li Kong destroy Fire Dragon City and kill millions of people, but he also killed Xiaohei's mother. He was someone that Yi Qinghan had to kill. On the contrary, Yi Qinghan's hatred for the Star Sovereign was not as deep. Looking at the Star Sovereign's body that was like a sharp sword, a faint desire to fight began to emerge in her bones. She did not hide it, but instead, it became more and more intense, somewhat wild and unrestrained. Jide was the first to react. He frowned and didn't say anything. Ice Queen and Qing Shan's eyes were filled with praise. Although they said that a newborn calf wasn't afraid of a tiger, it was rare to have such a challenging heart. South Mountain Sovereign laughed coldly, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. Wind Moon Sovereign Mo Shanghuang and the others were worried. Such crazy fighting intent, if the person inside sensed it, it wouldn't be a good thing. Xiao, Mo Shanghuang and the others were worried about really happened. Star Sovereign's gaze, which hadn't moved since he appeared, suddenly turned his head and shot towards Yi Qinghan. His gaze was like lightning, piercing through the dim light and locking onto Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan felt pain in his eyes, as well as in his soul. He was secretly shocked. The number one person in the divine realm was really awesome. He could actually injure a level 9 expert from such a long distance with just 2 gazes. If it was a normal person, he would have immediately shifted his gaze and avoided it. However, Yi Qinghan was stubborn. Although the gaze made his eyes hurt and his soul tremble, he was still stubborn. However, he still stubbornly clenched his teeth and braced himself to meet that gaze. The light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter, as if he wanted to compete with the legendary overlord opposite him. Jide's expression was solemn, but he didn't say anything. Mo Shanghuang and the others were even more worried. The mocking smile on Ing Kuei's face was even more obvious. His eyes were filled with the desire to stir up trouble. Ice Queen and Lord Qing Shan became silent. However, Ice Queen took a step towards Yi Qinghan. For the first time, a smile appeared at the corner of the Star Sovereign's mouth. It was elegant and somewhat charming. Li Kong said softly, "Sovereign, he is Yi Qinghan." Huh? The Star Sovereign's smile widened a little, and his smile became even brighter. His gaze swept over Yi Qinghan, and he actually looked away. Li Kong followed behind him and smiled. He didn't dare to say anything. He reported everything that happened in the past few years to Star Sovereign. He knew that he didn't need to say anything, and Star Sovereign would know what to do, because he was very familiar with this smile. The brighter the smile on Star Sovereign's face, the thicker the killing intent in his heart. As expected, Star Sovereign moved. A saber appeared in his hand. A huge saber. A saber that was twice as long as the Slaughter God's saber. Chapter 1038. The moment the Star Sovereign moved, numerous eyes lit up. What kind of shocking scene would happen when the top person in the God world made his move? Yi Qinghan tensed up. He tried his best to sense the ripples of the spatial energy of the Supreme Island. He really wanted to know how terrifying his opponent's strength was. Lord Qingshan, Ice Queen, and the other sovereigns all had solemn expressions on their faces. A few of them even closed their eyes and started to sense the situation. The eyes of the numerous people on Supreme Island started to burn with passion. Although they couldn't move, they could sense it with their divine senses. Their sovereign lord was going to make his move. How could they not be excited? The terrifyingly long saber in the Star Monarch's hand waved in the air for a few times. Then, the saber turned into an afterimage and slashed down at the sky. Then, the blade suddenly disappeared from Star Sovereign's hand. Star Sovereign placed his hands behind his back and continued to look into the sky like he didn't even slash down. Confusion flashed in the eyes of the numerous cultivators on Supreme Island. Even the numerous venerables behind him blinked their eyes as they looked at the Star Sovereign and then at the sky. They didn't know what the Star Sovereign was doing. Only Li Kong's fat head started to move. His eyes that could only be seen through a slit were terrifyingly bright. Apart from Li Kong, numerous other people's expressions changed. Even Ice Queen's cold face flushed red. Yi Qinghan gulped a few mouthfuls of saliva, and his face was filled with disbelief. Pooh! Just as the numerous cultivators on Supreme Island were confused, the sound of cloth being torn spread out from the sky. Then, the bodies of the countless Azura King Abyssals in the sky began to crack open and fall down. Just as they hit the ground, these fragments turned into powder and slowly floated down. A strange black rain began to fall from the sky. At this time, all the martial artists in the city discovered that their bodies could move at this moment. They looked at the black powder that was rustling down and then swept the air with their divine senses. All of them were frightened, as if they had seen a ghost. The hundreds of thousands of demons and thousands of Shura kings in the sky had all disappeared. So many terrifying creatures, powerful creatures that could turn the supreme island into a river of blood, were all killed by Star Monarch with a single slash. There was no need to doubt the strength of a monarch. However, didn't monarchs all wave their palms and forcefully use the power of space to crush their enemies? They didn't even see anything, yet they were all dead. The monarch is invincible. Long live the monarch. Chief Pavilion Master is invincible. Long live Chief Pavilion Master. Although countless people didn't understand, not even Li Kong, but that didn't stop them from revering the Star Monarch more and more. Everyone knelt down on one knee respectfully, one hand on their chest, and shouted in unison to express their highest respect. Amateurs enjoy the show, while experts appreciate the artistry. All the sovereigns outside had clearly sensed the domineering and brutal slash from the Star Sovereign just now. When Kid attacked, he could transform the power of space into giant dragons that circled around him. As he attacked, they tore apart the enemies in front of him. However, Star Monarch only used a very small portion of the power of space around him. This massive power of space actually compressed as he waved his long saber. Finally, he slashed towards the sky. This massive power of space instantly turned into a silent giant arrow that shot into the demons in the sky. This sharp sword formed by the power of space suddenly exploded in the black fog. It turned into thousands of small arrows that shot towards every demon in all directions. It was as fast as lightning, at least 10 times faster than Kid's speed. Then, as expected, all the demons turned into powder and floated down. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Yi Qinghan compared it. Not to mention himself. Even Kid's method of using the power of space was worlds apart from Star Monarch's. Not to mention the terrifying speed of the giant arrow formed by the power of space and its terrifying penetrative power. Star Monarch only used a small portion of the power of space to achieve such a terrifying attack power. This was already unparalleled. If Star Monarch gathered more power of space and created a sharp sword that was 10 times or 100 times bigger than the one before, how could he block it? Could he block it? Would the giant palm that he created with the power of space be pierced through? If he created billions of such arrows, where could he hide in the world? Who could block it? Yi Qinghan didn't dare to imagine. Moreover, Lord Devour said that the power of space that Star Monarch controlled could reach the size of the entire Star Sea. How terrifying was this power? Not to mention his strange way of using the power of space. Even if he used the most barbaric method to create a giant palm, it could easily smash him into pieces. Actually, only Ice Queen and Lord Qingshan knew that Star Monarch's power was just the tip of the iceberg. A soul that was heavily injured and living in a foreign body could only use a fraction of its original power. Both of them knew that this man who looked down on the world had unfathomable power. They didn't think that he would reveal such a skill that shocked them. Once he regained his full strength, how strong would he be? Besides Ice Queen, Lord Qingshan, and Yi Qinghan, everyone else took a few steps back. Although taking a few steps wouldn't make them safer, they felt that at least they would be safer behind Qingshan and Ice Queen. Kid took a step back. Seeing that Yi Qinghan didn't retreat, he gritted his teeth and stood up behind Yi Qinghan. Xiaohei, enter the beast space. Yi Qinghan didn't retreat. Although he felt a bit of fear, he knew that Star Monarch wouldn't attack them if he didn't destroy the Devil King. Also, he believed Lord Devour's words. Since Star Monarch was injured, he definitely wouldn't be so stupid to fight so many kings. Although he didn't retreat, he started to prepare and sent a message to Xiaohei. Xiaohei didn't hesitate. His eyes shone with an unknown expression. Although he was usually mischievous and sometimes even more stubborn than Yi Qinghan, he wouldn't mess around in such a situation. However, it wasn't enough to mess around in such a situation. His body turned into a shadow and disappeared into Yi Qinghan's chest. However, before he entered the beast space, he strongly requested Yi Qinghan to open the soul connection between them. He wanted to pay close attention to the situation through Yi Qinghan's soul. Supreme Island. The black mist in the sky started to dissipate. All the kings started to sense the situation nearby. They all knew that the Devil Monarch would either make a move or quietly escape. Otherwise, once the black fog completely dissipated, it was very likely that his real body would be discovered by these powerful sovereigns. Then, his fate would be very tragic. All warriors, retreat 100,000 miles. Lord Qingshan hollered. A glowing iron rod appeared in his hand. A white jade sword appeared in Ice Queen's hand. All the monarchs had their best weapons in their hands. Yi Qinghan hesitated for a moment, but he didn't take out any weapons. The atmosphere in the sky became really tense. Everyone was waiting for the guest who came from afar to appear. Chapter 1039. When the last patch of black mist was about to dissipate, the guest that came from afar finally appeared. A face appeared in the sky, a really clear face. This face was really beautiful, and one couldn't tell if it was male or female. It was really devilish and captivating. There was a charming smile on his face, like the most elegant gentleman. His eyes were really clear like a pond of spring water. He didn't look at anyone and just stared at the giant teleportation formation behind Star Sovereign. The sovereigns on Qingshan's side didn't move. Instead, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Since the Devil Monarch had appeared, then there was nothing to worry about. Their space powers had already frozen the surrounding region. This Devil Monarch couldn't escape. Yi Qinghan looked at that face that was even more seductive than the enchantress and frowned slightly. The Devil Monarch was said to be as intelligent as humans. So why was he so stupid to reveal his true body? Even if he wanted to enter the teleportation formation, even if he wanted to save his ancestor demon, he had to be alive to do so. Numerous martial artists on Supreme Island didn't bother to wipe off the dust on their bodies. They all looked curiously at the face in the sky. Was this the legendary Devil Monarch? His face looked like a human's? It didn't look special at all? Star Sovereign's golden eyes lit up. His white hair moved without any wind and danced in the sky. That long blade appeared in his hand once more. Without hesitation, he waved it and slashed down towards the sky. Punk! The devilish face in the sky was smashed into pieces in front of everyone's eyes. It turned into black dust that fell to the ground. It landed on numerous shocked faces. Dead? So simple? This Devil Monarch wasn't much stronger than Shura King? Yi Qinghan and the others were also extremely puzzled. A famous demon monarch couldn't have died so easily, right? Lord Qingshan and Ice Queen frowned and looked around warily. They knew that the Devil Monarch definitely wasn't dead, as he only revealed his face. If the Devil Monarch didn't reveal his true body, then they definitely wouldn't be able to kill him. Just at that moment, Star Sovereign did something that everyone was really confused about. He actually closed his eyes. A moment later, he opened them. His eyes shone so brightly that no one dared to look at him. At the same time, Lord Qingshan shouted, "Not good!" Bang! Countless black flames silently blossomed on the island, like a white lotus blooming in the dark night. It was incomparably beautiful and dazzling. And it wasn't just one or two black flames that bloomed. Instead, they bloomed in every corner of the Supreme Island. All the cultivators who came into contact with the black powder of the demon earlier started to burn silently at this moment. He started burning without any warning. There wasn't even a scream. In that instant, at least hundreds of millions of martial artists had turned into raging black flames. Countless high-level warriors had used their divine power to shake off the black powder at the first moment and were lucky enough to escape. Of course, there were also warriors as strong as 7th-grade war gods who didn't care about the black powder that was no different from dust and also turned into black flames. Instantly, the entire Supreme Island turned into a living hell. Countless cultivators screamed in fear and flew into the sky to avoid the demonic black flames. The black flames began to spread in all directions, and countless houses, forests, and grasslands were spread out. Smoke began to fill the air. The Supreme Island was in a mess. The beautiful sacred island had turned into hell. Humph! You are digging your own grave. The Star Sovereign spoke for the first time. His furious humph echoed through the sky. Even Yi Qinghan and the rest who were far away felt their eardrums hurting. He still didn't move. Li Kong and the rest behind him flew up and shouted to calm everyone down. They gathered all the surviving cultivators at the left corner of the city. The Star Sovereign moved again. He suddenly appeared in midair and swung his saber a few times at lightning speed. Then he swung his saber downwards. The saber was extremely fast. Other than the ninth-grade experts, even Li Kong only saw a flash of white light. Boom! As the saber slashed down, the entire Supreme Island felt like it was hit by a giant meteorite. The entire island shook, and the surrounding blood-red seawater stirred up huge waves. All of the buildings on Supreme Island turned into dust and flew everywhere. A huge mushroom cloud rose up and covered the sky. It blocked the vision of countless martial artists in the sky and blinded their eyes. But at this moment, a teleportation formation on the plaza lit up. It wasn't the kind of light used for teleportation. Instead, it was a white light that looked like a protective shield. It protected the teleportation formation. This teleportation formation was the one that teleported them down to the lava cave. Before the smoke settled, everyone could sense what was happening below the Supreme Island. The Supreme Island was flattened by the Star Sovereign using his power of space. It was even flatter than a plane. The entire Supreme Island sank more than 10 meters into the sea. The black flames that were ignited earlier had all disappeared without a trace. At this moment, not only the Star Sea martial artists above the Supreme Island, but even Yi Qinghan and the rest looked at each other in shock. They were dumbfounded as they looked at the white-haired man in midair. Yi Qinghan was thinking that if the fiery dragon city was attacked by the demons, he would definitely flatten the entire city. But he wouldn't be as decisive as the Star Sovereign. After all, the Supreme Island was his island. It was where the God of War Pavilion's General Pavilion was located. Supreme Island was where the God of War Pavilion's General Pavilion was located, an ancient city that had existed for tens of millions of years. Not to mention the precious documents stored inside and the rare treasures in the mansions of the major clans. Just the ancient buildings on this island that had stood for God knows how many years were already an immeasurable amount of wealth. The Star Sovereign actually slapped it just like that. But in the next second, Yi Qinghan was attracted by a white figure that was slowly forming beside the teleportation formation. All the black powder on the island gathered towards the center of the island and formed a white figure. She was dressed in white, and her hair was whiter than snow. She had an enchanting smile on her face, and she looked at the Lord of Stars in midair and smiled brightly. He actually revealed his true form. Is he asking to die? Qing Shan hollered. His face was filled with shock. When Yi Qinghan and the others heard this, they were all confused. Even the Ice Queen was confused. What was this demon monarch thinking? He still couldn't help but reveal his true form in such a situation. How could he still smile? Did he think that he still had a chance to sneak into the evil abyss to destroy the seals that were suppressing the demon monarch? The Star Sovereign's expression changed. The giant blade in his hand slashed down towards the demon monarch. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the demon monarch actually stood on the spot and didn't move. Black flames burned on his body as he charged towards the giant teleportation formation. Punks! Star Monarch controlled the space power and turned it into a giant dragon. It was a giant dragon that was hundreds of times larger than the giant dragon that Kid had created. Moreover, this giant dragon even materialized. It wasn't just roaring silently, but it gave out a sky-shaking roar. It was so powerful that even Yi Qinghan felt suffocated as it pressed down towards the demon monarch that was covered in black flames. Hong long long! It was as if Supreme Island had suffered a magnitude 12 earthquake. The blood-red ocean water around formed tsunamis. The demon monarch that was covered in black flames was smashed into pieces. But the demon monarch still had a bright smile on his face before his body was ripped into pieces. Qing Shan, Ice Queen, why aren't you coming over to help? This teleportation formation is used to suppress the demon monarch. The Star Sovereign looked at the white light from the teleportation formation, and his expression changed. He roared towards Qing Shan and Ice Queen. The bright white barrier on the teleportation formation started to give off black lines. The white and black intersected, and it was extremely eye-piercing. Chapter 1040. Formation Base? Qing Shan's expression changed. Ice Queen's face turned even redder. If she was a goddess above the 9 heavens in the past, then she was now a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. It made one's heart palpitate. However, no one paid attention to Ice Queen. They were all thinking about what Star Sovereign meant. Just as everyone was thinking about it, Qing Shan and Ice Queen had disappeared from their side and appeared outside the teleportation formation. At the same time, Star Sovereign teleported outside too. The 3 of them didn't care about the gazes of others. Their 6 hands waved in the air. In the end, their hands were filled with source energy, and they attached it to the white barrier outside the teleportation formation. Li Kong and the others exchanged glances with one another. They didn't know what the 3 of them were doing. However, Yi Qinghan and the other Grade 9 experts could clearly sense the surrounding spatial force rushing towards the 3 of them like a tide. Finally, through their hands, the spatial force was continuously injected into the teleportation formation's protective shield. The snake-like black lines on the teleportation formation barrier were originally spreading really quickly. However, under the 3 of them's control, it started to slow down. It seemed like the situation was alleviated. "Brother Jida, what is going on?" Yi Qinghan was still holding the green jade talisman tightly. If the situation wasn't right, he would crush it right away. He stared at the black lines on the barrier. Without even turning his head, he sent a voice transmission to Jida. "I'm not sure, but I think the Devil Monarch sacrificed himself to cause some changes to the teleportation formation. It seems like the teleportation formation is suppressing the Devil Monarch in the Evil Abyss. It is a very important item. Once the black lines spread all over the barrier, the seal suppressing the Devil Monarch might loosen. If not, the 3 of them wouldn't be so nervous." Jida's eyes were filled with seriousness and confusion. He took in a deep breath and sent another voice transmission. "Little Han, let's retreat. The Devil Monarch has been killed. If Star Sovereign stabilizes the situation and attacks us, we will be in trouble." "Retreat?" Yi Qinghan's brow furrowed. He looked towards the elephant-like shadow in the corner of Supreme Island. Li Kong, the culprit who had caused the deaths of millions of people in Flame Dragon City. The culprit who had murdered Xiaohei's mother. Now that there was such a good opportunity, if he were to slap it with his palm, then Li Kong would definitely die. Then, he would immediately let Kid teleport him away. The Star Sovereign wouldn't attack him at such a critical juncture, right? Even if he made a move, his current strength would definitely be greatly reduced, right? Kill, or not to kill. Yi Qinghan hesitated. Next to him, Jida saw Yi Qinghan's gaze turn towards Li Kong and knew what he was thinking. He immediately transmitted his voice anxiously. "Little Han, there will be opportunities in the future. Don't do stupid things." If Yi Qinghan resisted, it would be impossible for Kid to teleport him. Otherwise, Kid would have teleported back to the Misty Continent with Yi Qinghan a long time ago. "Kill. Boss, was my mother really killed by that fat pig?" At this moment, an extremely angry voice sounded in Yi Qinghan's mind. Yi Qinghan was shocked and forgot that he had opened the soul connection with Xiaohei. Xiaohei knew exactly what he was thinking just now. At this moment, Xiaohei was roaring and transmitting his voice. "Yes, the Enchantress and your aunt both said that your mother was killed by Li Kong. Your father searched everywhere for opportunities and treasures to enhance his strength because of your mother's death, and died in the end." Since Xiaohei knew, Yi Qinghan didn't intend to hide it from him and transmitted his voice. He knew that although Lord Devourer told Xiaohei about his background, he didn't tell him how the Soul Emperor and his wife died. "Kill him, boss, kill him. I beg you. You must kill him. Kill him." Before Yi Qinghan could finish his words, Xiaohei's furious roar sounded in his mind. He could also feel that Xiaohei was jumping around in the beast battle space crazily. His pair of intelligent eyes turned blood red as if he wanted to rush out of the beast battle space and kill this enemy who killed his mother himself. "All right." Yi Qinghan's eyes became determined. and his body emitted a faint murderous aura. Kid was shocked. He knew that Yi Ching Han had made up his mind. He took out the communication jade talisman and began to transmit a message to Lord Devour. At the same time, he transmitted a message to Yi Ching Han, asking him to crush the green jade talisman immediately if anything went wrong. He also transmitted a message to Mo Shanghuang, Monarch Yinran, and the Hidden Monarch, asking them to retreat together. Swoosh! Just as Kid, Hidden Monarch, Mo Shanghuang, and Monarch Yinran's bodies disappeared at the same time. Killing intent exploded from Yi Ching Han's body. Under the shocked gazes of the remaining monarchs, Yi Ching Han's body slowly turned illusionary. A giant face appeared in the sky, and a furious voice rang out. Li Kong die. Monarch Wind Moon was furious and hollered. Monarch Hanya, don't do anything stupid. Haha, you asked for it. South Mountain Monarch In Kuei laughed sinisterly. His body teleported 1,000,000 miles away. The other monarchs were afraid of being implicated, so they all teleported far away. In the end, Monarch Wind Moon also teleported away helplessly. This idiot, Ice Queen scolded. She looked at the vicious smile on Star Monarch's face. She wanted to say something, but didn't say anything. She sighed helplessly. Lord Qingshan didn't even look at the giant face in the sky. He continued to maintain the teleportation formation like he didn't want to interfere in the grievances between Yi Ching Han and Supreme Island. This time, Yi Ching Han didn't slap down. Instead, he used his giant palm to grab Li Kong. Li Kong's fat body started to tremble. His eyes, which had been narrowed into a slit, were now wide open. His eyes were filled with fear. If it wasn't for Yi Ching Han using the power of space to suppress him, he would definitely shout at the top of his lungs to ask the Star Monarch to save him. Star Monarch would definitely save him even without Li Kong's shout. If his top general was killed in front of so many people, then no one would follow him in the future. His white hair started to dance in the wind. Fresh blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth, and his face became vicious. How many years had it been since someone dared to behave so arrogantly in front of him? The pride of the top person in the god world couldn't be challenged. Yi Ching Han had been provoking him. Star Ocean's top overlord title was stepped on by this person. He still wanted to slap his face in front of everyone. Originally, he wanted to wait for his soul to fully recover before wiping out these clowns. But now he couldn't care so much. Even if his injuries got worse, he had to kill this clown. Star Monarch's hands were still on the barrier, but his white hair danced even more intensely. In the sky, a sharp arrow condensed from the power of space appeared out of thin air and shot towards Yi Ching Han's huge palm. Before the palm could grab hold of Li Kong, the two collided violently. Pung! Yi Ching Han didn't expect Star Monarch to save him at such a crucial moment. The giant hand and the sharp arrow collided violently. A huge gust of wind blew. Li Kong and countless martial artists from the Starry Sea were instantly blown away by the gust of wind. Countless martial artists spat out mouthfuls of blood, and the waves below rose to a height of tens of meters. Yi Ching Han's body shook, but his eyes lit up. Star Monarch didn't know if it was because his soul was injured or because he was living in someone else's body, but he couldn't use much space power. The sharp arrow clashed with his giant palm and dissipated in the air. They were evenly matched. Yi Ching Han spat out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes were filled with madness. He formed another giant palm and smashed it in Li Kong's direction. At the same time, a black saber appeared in his hand. He held the Slaughter God saber in one hand and the green jade talisman in the other. He turned into a flash of lightning and rushed in Li Kong's direction. Green jade talisman, I'm counting on you. Yi Ching Han's eyes turned bloodshot. Since the battle had started, there was no room for friendship. He didn't dare to touch Star Monarch, but Li Kong had to die. The Star Monarch could once again destroy his palm that was formed by the power of space. Could he defend against the two-pronged attack of spectral spirit? Chapter 1041. Yi Ching Han is such an idiot. On the rooftop of the Soul Devourer Palace, Lord Devour smashed the book in his hand on the table. The square jade table was smashed into powder, and the beautiful grape trellises around were smashed. Countless grapes fell on the rooftop, and the enormous energy tore them into pieces, scattering everywhere. Lord, Miss Gio's face turned pale. She had followed Lord Devour for a long time, but she had never seen Lord Devour angry, let alone this furious. Even when Yi Qinghan almost died in the mysterious spirit cave mansion, Lord Devour still drank his tea calmly. But now, he was furious and turned the entire rooftop into a mess. Lord Devour didn't speak, but the coldness in his eyes made Miss Gio's heart shiver. She thought for a while, then quickly sent a message to Jida, asking him to tell her everything about the current situation. Although Jida was standing 1,000,000 miles away from the Supreme Island, Lord Devour's tone was extremely fierce, so he didn't dare to be careless. He spread his space power to check the situation in the distance. While he was checking, the Ice Queen and the Lord of Stars continued to pour space power into the teleportation formation, using the purest energy in the world to suppress the black lines in the formation. Yi Qinghan waved his palm for the first time, and the Lord of Stars also started to dance, creating a sharp arrow. The two were evenly matched. Jida heaved a sigh of relief, knowing that even if Yi Qinghan couldn't defeat him, he could still escape. He quickly sent a message to Lord Devour. Little Han is such an idiot. How dare he ignore my message? Even if Shintu Xiong's soul possessed another warrior, how could he deal with him? Lord Devour knew Yi Qinghan's stubbornness. He knew that even if he sent 100 messages, Yi Qinghan wouldn't respond. He was so angry that he was shivering. Luckily, Jida said that Shintu Xiong could only use a small part of his real strength. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. No, isn't the teleportation formation suppressing the Supreme Devil Array? Isn't it under the magma? This teleportation formation, could it be the restriction array suppressing Shintu Xiong's real body? Oh no! All of a sudden, Lord Devour's eyes opened wide. He shouted loudly. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes, and he suddenly shouted, "Xiao Yu, activate the second retreat plan. Gio, go to Fiery Dragon City immediately. If the Enchantress tells number 2 the retreat plan, we'll have to deal with it. If he didn't let all the martial artists with the Cyan Jade Talismans crush them, the rest of them would have to return to the Fire Dragon Continent through the Carefree Pavilion. Immediately! Quick! Xiao!" Before Madame Gio could react, Lord Devour had disappeared from the rooftop. Countless figures instantly flew out from the city Lord Manor. The one in the lead was Emperor Yu. His loud roar, which was amplified by his divine power, resounded through the entire soul-devouring city. Everyone who has been bestowed with the soul-devouring Jade Talisman, gather in the plaza. Now! Emperor Yu directly flew into the plaza, and his divine power surged out, sending countless people flying. At the same time, the countless guards quickly surrounded the empty space that Emperor Yu had cleared out. The divine power in Emperor Yu's hand increased, and he directly slapped the empty space in the plaza. The green stone slabs scattered in all directions. An array of light lit up, revealing a huge teleportation array. Emperor Yu's face sank as he shouted, "Everyone with the soul-devouring Jade Talisman, enter the teleportation array immediately." Gio, what are you doing here? Still not going to Flame Dragon City? Madame Gio was startled. She didn't know what had happened, but she knew that something big had happened. Earth-shaking, earth-shattering event. She didn't dare to think about anything else, stepping into the teleportation array and flying to Flame Dragon City. The Flame Dragon City was already in chaos. Leijin seemed to have received the news. At this moment, when Madame Gio appeared and explained the situation, Leijin's face became even darker. Countless citizens of the Flame Dragon Island and the Flame Dragon Island were arranged to enter the teleportation formation in the city Lord's Mansion. Then, they entered the sealed God Valley. Finally, they all stepped into Yu Qingcheng's open door of the Carefree Pavilion. Madame Gio, what happened? Where's Qing'an? Where's Xiaohei? Why aren't they back yet? When Madame Gio appeared in the sealed God Valley, Yu Qingcheng, Peach Blossom, Li Shui, and the others immediately surrounded her. Their faces were filled with panic, but they forced themselves not to show it. In fact, the ninth madam was also in a daze at this moment. She shook her head and said, "I don't know what happened either. This is an order from the Lord. After you arrange for the citizens of the Fire Dragon Continent's Fire Dragon City to enter, immediately crush the green jade talisman that the Lord gave you. As for Little Han and Xiao He, Lord has already rushed over. There shouldn't be any big problems." The calmest person present was Yao Ji. She said lightly, "There's no need to crush the jade talisman. It's a waste for me to crush it here. Besides Lei Jun and Qingqing Ajio, the others don't resist. I will teleport you all in." With a wave of Yao Ji's hand, Yi Sahan, Peach Blossom, Li Shui, and the others suddenly disappeared. Then, Yao Ji waved her hand again, and the elders of Flame Dragon City also disappeared from the sealed God Valley. Countless people of the Flame Dragon Continent and the descendants of the Night Emperor were puzzled. However, Yi Qinghan had said that when he was not around, they would listen to Lei Jun. They didn't ask anything and quickly teleported back to the Flame Dragon Continent from the Carefree Pavilion. "Lord Yao Ji, do you know what happened?" Lei Jun asked Yao Ji when he saw that most of the people had teleported. Yao Ji sighed deeply and said, "The Star Sovereign is likely to come out, although he might not have recovered from his serious injuries. Since Jia Wu has activated the second evacuation plan, it means that our lives will be in danger at any moment. The Soul Emperor stole two of the most precious treasures from him in the past. He will definitely take revenge. I will explain this to you later. Let's go." "No." To everyone's surprise, Lei Jun shook his head and said, "You go first. I will stay in Flame Dragon City." Yao Ji looked at the determined look in Lei Jun's eyes and shook her head slightly. Then, she brought you Qingqing and Madame Jiao and disappeared from the sealed God Valley. Lei Jun was silent for a moment. Then, he teleported out and gave some instructions to a senior elder who stayed in the city. Then, he stepped into the transmission array to Dragon Sun City. Within Soul Devourer City, tens of thousands of warriors with Soul Devourer Jade talismans were constantly entering the teleportation array. The teleportation array on the plaza was constantly flashing, sending out batches of Soul Devourer City's experts and low-level warriors with great potential. When the last group of people was teleported in, the dark-skinned but handsome Emperor Yu's eyes flashed with the same light as Lei Jun's. He said to Emperor Yi and his wife, "Jiao Shanshan, you two go in." "Second brother, you're not leaving?" Although Emperor Yi didn't understand many things, he knew what Emperor Yi wanted to do at this moment. He called out anxiously. On the contrary, the beautiful senior elder, Jiao Shanshan, didn't say a word. She stepped into the transmission array, and her eyes met with Emperor Yu's. Emperor Yu's face was filled with a bright smile. He didn't say anything and only looked at his wife. Then, he kicked Emperor Yi into the transmission array and decisively activated it. When Jiao Shanshan's figure disappeared into the transmission array, Emperor Yu retracted his gaze. The smile on his face also turned bleak. Divine power revolved in his hands, and he directly smashed the transmission array to pieces. Then, he looked at Soul Devourer City and leisurely said, "Soul Devourer City, I will be with you." Chapter 1042. Xiaohan is dangerous. Crush the Jade Talisman. Stop killing. Above Supreme Island, Yi Qinghan formed a giant palm and smashed it down towards Li Kong. At the same time, his body was like lightning as he flew towards Li Kong from another direction with the Slaughter God blade in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot. Yi Qinghan acted like he didn't hear Jida's furious voice transmission. He shouted, "Dog, it's up to you now. Li Kong, die." The dog thing specter turned into a gust of wind and whistled through the air. It didn't look very powerful, but Yi Qinghan knew that Li Kong was frozen by his own space power and didn't have any source of energy to protect his body. Once he was attacked, there was a high chance that he would be killed. Star Sovereign, who was beside the teleportation formation, waved his white hair even more recklessly. The fresh blood at the corner of his mouth made his hideous face look even more terrifying. Ice Queen looked coldly at the crazy Yi Ching Han and the hideous Star Sovereign. She felt helpless. Although she liked Yi Ching Han, she couldn't offend the top person in the god world just for Yi Ching Han. Lord Qing Shan acted like he didn't see anything as he focused on suppressing the black lines on the barrier. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that there weren't many black lines left on the barrier. If the formation's cornerstone was destroyed, the demon sovereign of Nepha's abyss would emerge, and the divine world would most likely be destroyed. Lord Qing Shan, Ice Queen, Lady Jia Wu said that this teleportation formation isn't used to suppress the evil demon sovereign, but to suppress Shin Tu Xiong's main body. Stop. If not, Shin Tu Xiong's main body will come out from the evil abyss. Two voice transmissions rang out in Ice Queen and Lord Qing Shan's mind. This was Ji Da's voice transmission. The two of them frowned at the same time, but their hands didn't stop. They continued to clear the black lines within the barrier. However, the two of them slowed down the injection of space power. You are asking for death. The viciousness on Star Sovereign's face became thicker. He suddenly hollered and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His body instantly exploded. At this moment, the power of space behind him had reached a terrifying level. Lord Qing Shan and Ice Queen were both stunned, and their expressions changed. This was because they realized that the terrifying space power that Lord of Stars had condensed by exploding his body and burning part of his soul was not directed at Yi Ching Han, who was in the air. Instead, it was injected into the white barrier. There weren't many black lines left in the shield. What he did was completely unnecessary. There must be something wrong with things that were abnormal. As the Star Monarch's powerful spatial energy entered the barrier, the black strands disappeared completely. The white light on the barrier grew brighter and shot into the sky. The entire Supreme Island suddenly started trembling, and it was even more intense than when the Star Monarch slashed at the Supreme Island with his saber. The world shook. He had been fooled. At this moment, both of them understood. Without hesitation, he teleported away. At the same time, Ice Queen shouted towards Yi Ching Han, "Yi Ching Han, run! Run now!" In the blink of an eye. Actually, when Yi Ching Han waved his palm and flew towards Li Kong with the Slaughter God blade until Ice Queen teleported away, it all happened at the same time. Honk! Along with Supreme Island shaking, Yi Ching Han's palm smacked onto Li Kong's elephant-like body. The strong space power directly turned Li Kong's body into dust. Even the tens of thousands of experts around him turned into a blood mist. Li Kong dead. However, Yi Ching Han's figure suddenly stopped in midair, and the gust of wind formed by that dog also stopped in midair, condensing into his flattering smile. He was somewhat at a loss, as if he hadn't even made a move. How did his target die? Yi Ching Han was also at a loss. Why didn't Star Sovereign save Li Kong? Was the energy that he gathered an illusion? Since he didn't want to save him, then why did he do so? Yi Ching Han, run! Run now! Ice Queen's voice rang out in Yi Ching Han's mind. Yi Ching Han looked down at the teleportation formation that shone brightly. Wong! Just at that moment, the teleportation formation shook once more. The entire Supreme Island quietened down. The surrounding blood-red seawater was still surging with raging waves. A golden-haired, golden-armored male appeared in the teleportation formation. His eyes met with Yi Ching Han's. At this moment, a pair of golden eyes appeared. There was no emotion in those eyes, but there was a domineering aura that looked down on the world. Yi Ching Han had seen these eyes before, and they were extremely familiar. Star Sovereign Shintu Xiong's eyes. Suddenly, he seemed to have understood many things. Without hesitation, he crushed the green jade talisman in his hand. At the same time, he sent a message to Yao Ji to pull him into the Illusion Palace. The reason why he wanted to kill Li Kong so crazily was because of these two things. He believed that no matter how strong Star Sovereign was, he wouldn't be able to stop him. Star Sovereign laughed. He laughed in an unrestrained manner. The disdain and mocking intent in his laughter was extremely obvious. The way he looked at Yi Ching Han was like a lion looking at a rabbit that was running away. His golden curly hair that reached his waist fluttered slightly. A small golden palace appeared in his hand out of thin air. The moment the palace appeared, it disappeared. At the same time, Yi Qinghan's body also disappeared from the sky. The remaining martial artists and venerables on Supreme Island were dazzled and confused. Things were developing too quickly. They couldn't understand it at all. They looked at the man who hadn't appeared for 1,000,000 years and were confused. Why was he smiling so brightly after Yi Qinghan escaped? Lord Qingshan and Ice Queen Wu Yi, who were watching from afar, were confused. But in the next second, everyone was shocked. A giant golden palace appeared in the sky. The palace gave off a 7-colored glow. Yi Qinghan, who had disappeared, appeared on the spot once more. His face was filled with confusion, and then it turned into terror. Haha, my main body is out, and you still want to escape? Bastard, continue to run, continue to crush the Jade Talisman. If you can escape today, I, Shintu Xiong, will write my name backwards. How about that? Star Sovereign walked towards the sky like there was an invisible staircase in the air. His footwork was really elegant, and the smile on his face was really carefree. After being trapped for 1,000,000 years, he finally came out. Why was he so unhappy? Not only did he come out, but he also obtained the top treasure of the God world with the help of Qingshan, Ice Queen, and the Devil Monarch. How could he not be happy? He was able to kill this clown that slapped his face the moment he came out. What reason did he have not to be happy? Is this the legendary Eternal Hall that can totally freeze space? The Eternal Hall that can freeze the connection with parallel space? Lord Qingshan's trembling voice started to transmit his voice to Ice Queen. Ice Queen didn't say anything, but her face turned a shade of red that could make all the men in the world go crazy. When Lord Qingshan saw Ice Queen's expression, a sad and regretful expression appeared on his face. He waved towards Blood Knight's sovereign in the distance and transmitted his voice. Stop fleeing. Come over. With this palace, there is no place in the God world that we can hide in. If there is a need, submit to Shintu Xiong. Ice Queen also transmitted her voice to Wine Moon Sovereign. South Mountain Sovereign teleported over. Yinran Sovereign Mo Shanghuang and Hidden World Sovereign gritted their teeth. In the end, they didn't crush the green talisman in their hands. The other sovereigns also teleported over helplessly like a defeated rooster. Jita looked at Yi Qinghan, who couldn't move at all. He sighed helplessly and crushed the green jade talisman in his hand, disappearing into the air. Chapter 1043. The important figures of Soul Eater City and Flame Dragon City gathered in the Soul Emperor Pavilion's Dream Palace on Soul Emperor Island. All of them looked anxious. Even Yu Qingcheng, who had always been calm, looked gloomy. After Jida crushed the blue jade talisman, he was teleported here. He didn't explain to the others. He just sent a message to Yao Ji, explaining the situation. Eternal Palace? Yao Ji murmured. She didn't have any information about this palace, but she knew it was very serious. She had used the Soul Emperor Pavilion's restriction to teleport Yi Qinghan here, but it didn't work. She wasn't surprised. As long as a 9th-grade expert froze the space, Yi Qinghan couldn't teleport. However, Yi Qinghan crushed the blue jade talisman made by Lord Devour, but he didn't teleport. This shocked her. Lord Devour had followed the Soul Emperor for a long time and learned many things. Lord Devour had tested the blue jade talisman. Even if he used the power of space to freeze it, he could still teleport. However, Yi Qinghan failed. This meant that the restriction in the Eternal Palace that Jida had mentioned was extremely powerful. It was so powerful that it could cut off the connection between that space and the parallel space. This wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Qinghan and Xiao He couldn't escape. They would die. Jida knew the situation. He closed his eyes helplessly. 9th-grade experts. They had 3 9th-grade experts on their side. As long as they were confident, they could increase the number of 9th-grade experts on their side to 6. The Hidden Sovereign, Mo Shanghuang, and Monarch Yinran would definitely take action if they had the slightest chance of winning. However, the moment Monarch Star appeared, he knew they didn't have the slightest chance. At that time, he wanted to take a gamble. But Lord Devour sent him a message to leave. Obviously, Lord Devour didn't have the slightest chance either. Therefore, no one could save Yi Qinghan and Xiao He. Although the people in the Dream Palace didn't know the specific situation, they could guess something from Yao Ji and Jida's expressions. Yu Qingchen closed her eyes, fireworks started to sob, and Yi Yao Rao's aura became even colder. Of course, there were even more people who were at a loss and felt infinite fear because of the unknown. Yao Ji's lips were as red as blood. She closed her eyes, using the Soul Emperor Pavilion's barrier to send a message to Lord Devour. The content of the message wasn't much, just one sentence. Let's give up. If we delay any longer, we won't be able to leave. Lord Devour wasn't in the Soul Emperor Pavilion. He was hovering above the sea of stars, a million miles away from the Supreme Island. Her red robe looked even redder under the reflection of the blood below. Her face did not show the anger that she had shown on the rooftop of Soul-Devouring City. Instead, she looked calm. She looked at the sovereign island in the distance with her beautiful eyes, although she couldn't even see the inner sea with her eyes. Above the Supreme Island, Star Monarch was clad in golden armor. Together with his golden hair and golden eyes, he was so dazzling that no one dared to look at him directly. He stood proudly in the air. He didn't wave a giant palm or condense a sharp arrow to kill Yi Qinghan, who was below the Golden Palace. He looked around at the seawater that was slowly calming down and the blue sky above the seawater. He opened his arms, closed his eyes, and twitched his nose. He smelled the air in an intoxicated manner and murmured, "It's been 1,000,000 years. Old thing, you've trapped me for 1,000,000 years. Today I, Shintu Xiong, am finally out. The air in the divine realm smells so good, sweet, fragrant, with a faint fishy smell. So comfortable, so comfortable." Then he suddenly laughed out loud. His laughter was ear-piercing, savage, and carefree. He still raised his hands high and roared, "Old thing, I'll definitely protect this plane of the divine realm for you. I'll definitely lead the people of the divine realm to fulfill your unfulfilled wish. Don't worry. Of course, before that, I need to clean up a few disobedient bastards." Before he even finished his sentence, the weather changed. A piercingly cold wind blew across the entire Star Ocean. Giant waves rose up in the blood-red seawater. An extremely suppressive aura condensed in the sky above the Star Ocean. Then, Star Sovereign's body disappeared. A giant face appeared in the sky, a giant face that covered the entire internal ocean. Submit or die. This pair of giant golden eyes didn't look at Yi Qinghan, who was below the palace. Instead, it looked at the rows of grade 9 experts standing at the border of the internal ocean. The coldness in his eyes could freeze the seawater. Ice Queen and Lord Qingshan didn't have any expression on their faces. However, the sovereigns at the side were all shocked and terrified. They looked at the giant face in the sky that was hundreds of times bigger than the one they had condensed. They knew that this was Star Sovereign showing off his strength to them, but they couldn't resist. They couldn't even muster up any will to fight. If Shun Tu Xiong, the top person in the divine realm, was lying, then he was undeniably the top person now. "Greetings, sir." South Mountain Sovereign was the first to kneel down. He knelt down completely, on both knees. "Greetings, sir." The two small-sized Secret Realm sovereigns knelt down without any hesitation. To them, it didn't matter who was the boss in the divine realm, as long as they could protect their own land. "Sir." Lord Qingshan's giant body suddenly became shorter. He knelt down on one knee, and Blood Knight Sovereign also knelt down with him. "Sir." Ice Queen's face didn't flush red anymore. She was ice cold and didn't kneel down. She just slightly lowered her head. It could even be considered a bow. Mo Shanghuang, Wind Moon Sovereign, Yinran Sovereign, and Hidden World Sovereign exchanged glances with one another. Helplessness flashed in their eyes. They all knelt down on one knee and lowered their noble heads. "Greetings, sir." In the face of absolute strength, nothing could go against it. In the face of life and death, all dignity could be sold. "Greetings, Sovereign." "Greetings, Head Pavilion Head." A heaven-shaking roar rang out from Supreme Island. The remaining Star Ocean martial artists all knelt down on one knee and shouted in unison. However, their shouts were filled with endless excitement and joy. At that moment, they seemed to have understood many things. They understood why the Lord of Stars didn't care about the martial artists in the galaxy, see when the demons arrived, why he didn't care about everything on the Supreme Island and razed it to the ground with a slash. Because, as long as he was here, as long as he came out, the entire God world would belong to him. To Star Ocean, there was no joy on Star Sovereign's face. He didn't even have any expression. He didn't continue to look at the sovereigns who knelt down. He also didn't look at the low-grade martial artists on Supreme Island. Instead, he looked at Yi Qinghan, who was below the palace. His giant lips curled up, and he laughed. Moments later, the laughter stopped. What replaced it was a bone-chilling voice. "Shameless woman, do you think you can hide from me with your invisibility technique? I will count to 3. If you don't show yourself and return the things in the Soul Emperor Pavilion to me, I will tear this so-called top genius of God world into pieces." Chapter 1044. Shameless Woman? Qing Shan and Ice Queen frowned. They instantly understood who Star Sovereign was talking to. Then, the other sovereigns also knew who this shameless woman was. Devouring Butterfly Dance. Soul Emperor and Lord Devour had barged into Evil Abyss and snatched 2 treasures from the soul, extinguishing lava. Many people knew that Lord Devour had used it, which had boosted her from the peak of level 7 to the upper level 9 in just 100 years. The other one was stored in the 9th floor of Soul Emperor Pavilion. Everyone knew this secret, because all the monarchs could clearly sense the terrifying and incomparably pure energy contained within the supreme treasure of the Soul Emperor Pavilion's 9th floor. However, when Soul Emperor placed Soul Emperor Pavilion on Soul Emperor Island, he said that if anyone wanted to obtain it, they had to follow his rules. Otherwise, Soul Emperor Pavilion would self-destruct, and everything would be thrown into the space turbulence. No one would be able to obtain it. No one in God world doubted Soul Emperor's restriction and artifact crafting skills. Although they were sovereigns and wouldn't die in the space turbulence, if they lost their way, they might have to wander in the space turbulence for the rest of their lives. Star Sovereign said that Lord Devour was shameless and he wasn't wrong on the surface. He wasn't wrong when he said that the items in the 9th floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion belonged to him. This was because the Nepha's Abyss had always been guarded by the Battle God Pavilion. Therefore, the items in the Nepha's Abyss belonged to the Battle God Pavilion, which meant that they belonged to the Star Monarch. But, was Devour Butterfly Dance here? Everyone used the power of space to sense, but they couldn't find Lord Devour. Even Ice Queen couldn't find him. They couldn't help but be shocked. Was Star Sovereign talking nonsense? Or did Lord Devour have some secret treasure? Could he avoid their detection? Yi Qinghan's body did not move. Although he could move, there was no panic on his face, nor was there any fear of being in a desperate situation. Everyone would die. At least he killed Li Kong today. He could answer to the millions of people who died in Flame Dragon City and Wind Emperor Mount Wu. Of course, the most important thing was that this was Xiao Hei's request. Li Kong was the culprit who killed Xiao Hei's mother. He had never been able to reject Xiao Hei's request. Without Xiao Hei, there would be no Yi Qinghan today. As the 7th son of the Yi family, it was worth it to be able to become the monarch of the divine world today. He had no regrets. Of course, he would not resign himself to his fate. He was calling out in a frenzy. He wasn't calling Lord Devour, the Enchantress, or the God Emperor. Instead, he was calling out to someone who might not even be able to hear him. War Emperor. At this very moment, he knew that with his abilities, he had no chance of escaping. At this moment, Lord Devour didn't send him any message. Apparently, Lord Devour didn't have any solution. The Ice Queen and Lord Qingshan had also submitted. He knew that even if he gave it his all, even if he self-destructed, he would not be able to hurt the Star Sovereign. Therefore, it didn't do anything stupid. He only placed his hopes on the War Emperor in the black stone inside the divine crystal. He didn't know how strong War Emperor was, but he had a feeling that he was very strong. At the very least, he was stronger than Star Monarch. He wasn't sure if the War Emperor could hear his call, so he could only do this. Shinta. All of a sudden, a familiar voice echoed in Yi Qinghan's head, causing two of Yi Qinghan's souls to shiver. However, he didn't let his expression change. He was just waiting for the War Emperor's next words with ecstasy. He has refined my things. No one in the divine world is his match now. It's useless for you to call me. I've told you, I'm just a remnant soul. I don't have any energy, let alone Shinta. I can't even kill an ordinary warrior. I didn't expect that you would meet him so early. Sigh. This is your fate, and also mine. However, the Battle Emperor's voice transmission made Yi Qinghan feel despair, even though he knew that the Battle Emperor was just a remnant soul. Although he knew that the War Emperor was just a remnant soul, he still had some hope in his heart. At this moment, it was completely shattered. Big brother, don't be afraid. We two brothers will go to the netherworld realm together. Xiaohe, who was lying in Yi Qinghan's beast space, was restless and impatient. However, after he got the answer from Yi Qinghan's soul, he calmed down. Xiaohe's thoughts were simple. If he could stay with Yi Qinghan, even if he had to die, he wouldn't be lonely. Phew. Then, let's go together. Being able to live like this is worth it. Yi Qinghan exhaled. He opened his eyes and scanned around as if he wanted to see the last time in this world. 1. The Star Sovereign's cold voice arose like the bell ringing in the doomsday, reminding Lord Devour that his patience had a limit. Lord Devour was still standing where he was. His red robe fluttered in the wind, but at this moment his body had a faint purple halo. It was this purple light that blocked off the other sovereign's probing. When she heard the Sovereign of Stars shout 1, a trace of helplessness and pain flashed through her beautiful eyes. In the end, she took out the communication jade talisman and closed her eyes. 2 streams of tears fell silently. Buzz! Yi Qinghan arched his brows as he felt the vibration in the messaging jade talisman. His soul consciousness scanned, but he was so skeptical. Did she send a message to Lord Devour, asking Xiaohe to destroy the ring that she had given him? Star Monarch, who was hovering in the sky, easily found that someone had sent a message to Yi Qinghan. However, he didn't mind it. Quite the contrary, the mocking smile on the corner of his mouth widened. In front of absolute power, all schemes and schemes were just like the floating clouds. When the Fire Dragon City was built, Lord Devour had killed White-Browed Venerable. Then, on the rooftop of the city master's mansion, he had given Yi Qinghan 2 rings, asking him to give them to Xiaohe. 1 ring was magical. A drop of Xiaohe's blood had disappeared into his body. Yi Qinghan knew that it was a treasure that Lord Devour had given to Xiaohe to protect himself. It had the same effect as the love of the dancing butterfly. However, Lord Devour had asked Xiaohe to destroy it. This message was very baffling. At this moment, what could destroying a ring change? Although it was inexplicable, Yi Qinghan did as he was told. Although Xiaohe was also skeptical, he just shook his small head and took out the ring from his body. Then, he used his claw to crush it. The moment he crushed the ring, Xiaohe's spirited eyes suddenly lit up. A moment later, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. A rather desolate smile. Boss, you're saved. Wait for me. Xiaohe sent a telepathic message to Yi Qinghan. Then he closed his eyes and rested his head in the beast's space. I'm saved. Yi Qinghan was not surprised. Instead, the doubt in his eyes deepened. He had a very bad feeling, but he did not know what would happen. But could there be anything worse at this moment? 2. Star Sovereign said coldly again. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the space in the distance shook violently. The space in the distance began to tremble violently. Then, a beautiful palm suddenly appeared and cut through the sky. It did not strike at the Star Monarch, but at the palace above Yi Qinghan's head. Humph, you still want to save him? Star Sovereign's eyes did not show any fear. He snorted coldly. Then, a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He looked at Yi Qinghan and sneered. the #1 genius in the god realm. What a pity. Die. The giant face in the sky didn't change. Below it, a sharp sword appeared out of nowhere. It was a sharp sword and not an arrow. It was a sword that was sharper and more domineering than an arrow. This hundreds of meters long sword was formed by space power. The compressed space power within caused Ice Queen and Lord Qingshan to frown. The other monarchs all felt like they were suffocating. The sharp sword broke through the sky. It didn't attack the beautiful hand, but Yi Qinghan, who was below. The beautiful hand and the sharp sword were both really quick. Based on their speed, they would hit their respective targets at the same time. Maybe the palace would be smacked away by the beautiful hand, but Yi Qinghan would definitely be smashed into pieces by the sharp sword. There was no surprise at all. What a waste. Ice Queen sighed and closed her eyes. Sadness flashed in Monarch Yinran's eyes. Who knew if it was for Yi Qinghan or for herself? Mo Shanghuang closed his eyes in pain. South Mountain Sovereign smiled brightly. His eyes opened wide as he waited for Yi Qinghan's body to turn into a blood mist and scatter in the air. Wong! Just at that moment, an extremely strong power surged out from Yi Qinghan's body. This aura caused Ice Queen to open her eyes once more. It also caused Star Sovereign's eyes to be filled with shock. This shock turned into rage. No! Xiaohei, no! We agreed to die together. No! At that moment, Yi Qinghan suddenly understood many things. He cried out in terror and roared out from the depths of his heart. Hong! That beautiful giant hand lightly smacked the golden palace. The palace wasn't smacked away, but it started to shake. That sharp sword hit Yi Qinghan. The 10-meter-wide sharp sword clashed with Yi Qinghan's small body. Instantly, Yi Qinghan was swallowed up. However, what shocked countless people was that at this moment, a set of strange black battle armor appeared on Yi Qinghan's body. The battle armor wrapped around Yi Qinghan's entire body, and there was a black horn on his head, which made him look even more strange. The battle armor emitted a dazzling light, as if Yi Qinghan had transformed into a black demonic sun, which no one could look at directly. The sharp sword formed from space energy smashed onto Yi Qinghan's body. Under the shocked gazes of everyone, Yi Qinghan's body was only flung backward. Under such a strong power, his body was actually perfectly fine. Demon Lady, teleport! A delicate voice rang out. A red figure appeared on the starry sea and then instantly disappeared. Yi Qinghan, who had been smashed into the air by the sharp sword, also disappeared along with it. The Star Monarch's face turned ferocious. Violent space power swept across the star sea. The blood-red seawater was raised into 1,000-meter-tall waves. The Star Monarch's deafening roar reverberated throughout the divinity realm. Soul-devouring transformation. It's that damned soul-devouring transformation again. I'm going to kill you all. Kill you all. At the same time, the Soul Emperor Island suddenly shook, causing the several supremacies to jump in fright. Then, something even more horrifying happened. The Soul Emperor Pavilion that they had protected for countless years actually moved. It turned into a black shadow that tore through space and vanished into the turbulent flows of space. Chapter 1045. Soul-Devouring Transformation. Many people were really unfamiliar with this, but a few sovereigns knew about it. That was because this was the overpowered technique of the Soul Emperor. The soul-devouring beast soul-devouring world was already overpowered, but this soul-devouring transformation was definitely overpowered. That year, the Soul Emperor used this technique to block Star Sovereign's palm with peak grade 7 strength and snatched the 2 treasures from the tiger's mouth. Everyone thought back to Yi Qinghan's little soul-devouring beast, the one that had just transformed. Who knew that black devouring beast, whose soul realm was only at God Emperor realm, and whose laws were so pitifully low, could actually use the soul-devouring transformation and block Star Sovereign's furious strike? The sharp sword that Star Sovereign formed contained terrifying energy. Apart from Qingshan and Ice Queen, none of the sovereigns present had the confidence to take it head-on. One could imagine how overpowered this soul-devouring transformation was. Looking at the raging Star Sovereign, Everyone was silent. When they felt a giant space ripple in the south, everyone was shocked once more. Seoul Emperor Pavilion disappeared, ripped open space, and entered the chaotic space flow. Although Ice Queen and the others didn't have any expression on their faces, they really respected that woman. Not only did she arrange so many things at the crucial moment, she didn't hesitate at all and ran. She also respected Jida for abandoning a continent just like that and running away. If Jida didn't run and chose to submit to Star Sovereign, he might still be able to sit on his ethereal monarch. Now, he was following Lord Devouring to wander. Who knew if he would be able to return to the god world in this life? Many things were just a matter of thought. But after enjoying so many years of riches and power, how many of them would be willing to give it up just like that? At least, Mo Shanghuang, hidden monarch Miss Yinran, couldn't. At that moment, there was a ripple in the air. Star Sovereign's giant face disappeared, and a golden-armored Shinta Xiong appeared in the air. His face wasn't as angry as before. He was calm. His golden eyes were as deep as the ocean. One couldn't guess what he was thinking about. After a short while, he turned his head and looked toward Supreme Island. In the end, his eyes locked onto a middle-aged man who looked similar to Li Fei. He said coldly, "Li Tao, right? Bring some people to the Misty Continent. From today onwards, you will be the Misty Continent sovereign. Whoever dares to defy you will be killed without mercy. Blood Knight Monarch, help him shake things up." Li Tao was Li Kong's younger brother. The Li clan had 3 venerables, but 2 of them had been killed by Yi Qinghan. Now, he was the only one left. Originally, his eyes were filled with sorrow and anger, but when he heard this, his face was filled with wild joy. He hurriedly kowtowed towards Yi Qinghan, and hot tears of incomparable sincerity appeared on his face. Of course, the Blood Monarch wouldn't say anything. He knew clearly that Lord Devour had escaped in such a short time. Her and Yi Qinghan's relatives must have already made arrangements to escape. With Kid gone, who else in the floating continent would resist? "Sir, since the demon monarch has been killed, the Supreme Island should be rebuilt immediately. Inkue is useless, but I'm willing to help rebuild it." After the Blood Knight Monarch left with Li Tao and more than 10 supremacies, the South Mountains Monarch immediately bowed down in a flattering manner. He bowed slightly like a loyal family dog. "We are willing to help rebuild the Saint Island." Lord Qingshan and Ice Queen exchanged glances, then led the other monarchs behind them to bow and shout. Since they had already submitted, then they had to show the proper attitude. And everyone in the Star Ocean helped Qingshan and Icy Snow to rebuild the Supreme Island. "Report to me once it's done." The Star Monarch was satisfied with their performance. He didn't say much, nodding his head and entering the Golden Palace. Then, the palace started to disappear in the sky. Looking at the disappearing Eternal Palace, all the monarchs looked at the sky above the Star Ocean and sighed in their hearts. The sky of the Divine World was going to change from today onwards. The Divine World was originally filled with warlords, but with the appearance of the Star Monarch and his sudden increase in strength, it was going to be unified. In just a short time, the Divine World would belong to Shin-Tu. The space turbulence was the isolation zone of every parallel space. The space turbulence was filled with space-shattering blade currents that could easily mince martial artists below the venerable realm into minced meat. There were also dark whirlpools that could trap even monarchs and prevent them from escaping. There were also black holes that could swallow everything. It could be said that space turbulence was very dangerous, extremely dangerous. Even the Star Monarch didn't dare to go deep into it. Once you were swallowed by the black holes, you would be completely lost. It was possible that you wouldn't be able to find your way back to the Divine World for the rest of your life. In other words, you wouldn't be able to find a single plane. The space turbulence wasn't like the space cracks in the Divine World. It was dark and gloomy. Once you entered the space turbulence, you would realize that there were shining objects everywhere. Many places were extremely beautiful, just like the endless stars. At this moment, countless people in the Dream Palace were shocked by the surrounding scenery. The restriction of the Dream Palace could easily simulate the surrounding scenery. At this moment, the world in front of fireworks and the others had subverted their understanding. They even forgot about their worries. Lord Devour sent a message. Yi Qinghan and Xiaohe had been rescued and were on the 9th floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. Jida and the Enchantress had also been teleported there. Although Lord Devour told them not to worry, they were still very worried since they hadn't seen Yi Qinghan in person. The elders of the Soul Eater City weren't as worried as fireworks and the others. As long as Lord Devour was there, they had nothing to fear. So, what if they had to wander in the space turbulence forever? At this moment, they were all looking at the shocking scenery outside. Their eyes and mouths were wide open, and they were all in awe. There were countless blade-like gusts of wind sweeping in the air. There was also a white whirlpool that was 10 times bigger than the Supreme Island. The airflow beside the whirlpool was extremely fast, let alone a person, even a giant beast that was tens of thousands of times bigger than the sky-shaking Chionchi beast would be sucked in. They had read about this in the books of the Soul Eater City, so they weren't surprised. What surprised them was that there were countless shining objects that looked like stars around them. Behind them, there was an even bigger shining object. At least, they couldn't see the full appearance of the shining object behind them. They could only see countless white airflows. Although the Soul Emperor Pavilion had been traveling at high speed in the space turbulence for half a day, and they were getting further away from the white airflow, they felt that the world behind them was getting bigger and bigger. Could it be that behind us is our divine world? What is that white airflow with a shiny surface? It must be. It wasn't obvious just now. Now we're getting further away from that huge object. It should be our divine world. We just got out of that white airflow. If this is the plane of the God realm, then are those countless glowing objects in the distant material planes. It's so magical. All right, why do I feel that the airflow on this plane looks like the origin energy? It can't be, right? It can't be the origin energy. How could there be so much origin energy? Exclamations arose from time to time. They felt like frogs jumping out of a well. It was the first time they saw the outside world. It was so magical, so unbelievable. Chapter 1046. Although they were racking their brains to make their imaginations more vivid, no one could give them a definite answer no matter how hard they guessed. Many people turned their heads to guess. In the Soul Emperor Pavilion, where they were staying, there were many flying tools in the divine world, such as the Crying Phoenix, the War Chariot, and many other magical things like the dragon boats that could soar in the sky or tunnel underground with god power. However, they had never heard of a flying tool that could enter the turbulent space current. Moreover, in the turbulent space current, the speed was very fast. Although they didn't know how fast it was, they guessed that it was at least as fast as a grade 9 monarch. The most important thing was the toughness of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. Countless broken space saber currents came, but the Soul Emperor Pavilion didn't even try to dodge them. It resisted them directly. Even a venerable wouldn't dare to resist them continuously, right? Every time they used the power origin, it would decrease. The Soul Emperor Pavilion flew fast in the turbulent space current, getting further away from the white air current behind them. However, they still couldn't see the whole picture behind them. Moreover, the glowing object in the distance seemed to be getting closer, but it seemed like it would never reach it. After watching for several nights, they lost interest. Instead, they felt a little bored. They didn't know where their final destination was, and how long would they stay in the Soul Emperor Pavilion. Many people started to cultivate in seclusion. Of course, there were still many people who were worried, their imaginations running wild. Emperor Yi and Senior Elder Jiao Shanshan were worried about Emperor Yu's life. Fireworks was worried about Yi Qinghan and Lei Zhen. Madame Jiao, Yu Qingcheng, Blue Rain, Yi Qingwu, and Yi Sahan were worried about Yi Qinghan and Xiaohe. Of course, they were all worried about their unknown fate. They didn't know why Lord Devour had ordered them to leave their homeland. They didn't know what had happened. However, they knew something was wrong. Something big had happened. They could never return to the divine world for the rest of their lives. They didn't know if the expert that had scared Lord Devour would come after them. Lord Devour, Yao Jida, Yi Qinghan, and Xiaohe hadn't shown up for 10 days. Without a leader, many people started to let their imaginations run wild. Yu Qingqing and the others sat on Yao Ji's big bed in silence. They didn't send messages or discuss anything, just waiting for Lord Devour, Yi Qinghan, and the others. Sitting at the corner of the bed, Li Shui's eyebrows were slightly furrowed. She gently stroked her abdomen with one hand and revealed a trace of kindness at the corner of her mouth. However, this trace of benevolence was incompatible with the deep worry and fear hidden in her eyes. She didn't know if Yu Qingqing and the others had an ominous premonition, but she didn't dare to ask. She would rather believe that the feeling in her heart was wrong. If Lord Devour said that Yi Qinghan and Xiao He had been saved, they should be all right. But why was her soul constantly throbbing? The atmosphere in the illusory palace became exceptionally solemn as everyone unconsciously released their auras. In fact, the atmosphere in the 9th level of the Soul Emperor Pavilion was even heavier. The 9th level of the Soul Emperor Pavilion was really beautiful. It had a big hall and several smaller halls. Also, there were so many rooms, which made it look like a magnificent palace. At this moment, in a luxuriously decorated room, some people were surrounding a green jade bed in the corner of the room. A man was lying on the jade bed, a young man with a handsome face. Unfortunately, his handsome face was pale, without any color of blood. His eyes were closed, and his breath was so weak that it was almost inaudible. It looked like he was dead. A woman in a red robe was sitting by the bed. Her beautiful hand was placed on the young man's forehead. Two people were standing next to him. One of them was a white-veiled woman with an enchanting charm, and the other was a scholarly middle-aged man. Both of them wore solemn faces, their brows furrowed. The other person didn't look at the man on the bed, nor did he come over. He was sitting on a stone bench in the corner of the room. Both of his hands were holding his head. His fingers were threaded into his hair, making it messy. He stooped, so no one could see his face. However, from his slightly bent back, they could see that he was in a gloomy mood. Yao Ji looked at Xiao He, who was getting paler. Then, she looked at Lord Devour, who had been sitting by the bed with his eyes closed for 10 days. Eventually, her eyes shifted to Yi Qinghan, who was sitting in the corner of the room. She wanted to say something, but her lips, which could make any man in this world crazy, moved a few times. Eventually, she didn't say anything. Thousands of words turned into a deep sigh. Jida also glanced at Yi Qinghan from the corner of his eyes. He pursed his lips, but he didn't say anything. He just looked at Xiao He, whose face was getting paler. A gleam of reluctance flashed in his eyes. After half a day, Lord Devour finally opened his eyes. At the same time, Yao Ji and Jida turned to Lord Devour. At the same time, Yi Qinghan, who was sitting in the corner, lifted his head, revealing an emotionless face and a pair of hot eyes. Lord Devour didn't have any expression on his face, but his eyes had a gleam of pain and a sigh. He shook his head, speaking in a low voice. He can live for 1 month max. I will force him to wake up. After 1 hour, bring Shuei here. 1 month. Enchantress and Kid shuddered. Although they had roughly guessed the outcome, they still felt extremely cruel when the answer was announced. Their faces changed. They looked at Lord Devour, then at Yi Qinghan. It was needless to say that Lord Devour and Xiao He had a close relationship. However, Lord Devour's character was so resolute. When the Soul Emperor died, she didn't fall. She just silently took revenge. And now, Xiao He was about to die, but she could say it in such a calm tone. It meant that no matter how bitter and painful her heart was, she could endure it. They were worried about Yi Qinghan, and they knew the relationship between Yi Qinghan and Xiao He. It could even be said that Yi Sahan, Yi Qinghan's biological son, didn't have as deep a relationship as the two of them. Moreover, Yi Qinghan's temperament was no different from a bull's. He was so stubborn. If he walked into a dead end, Yi Qinghan did not speak, nor did he shed tears. He did not even glance at Little Black. He only extended a hand to cover his eyes and lowered his head once again. His body did not tremble in the slightest, but his back seemed even more desolate. Soul-devouring transformation. It was the most heaven-defying innate ability of the soul-devouring beast. That year, when Lord Devour and the Soul Emperor intruded the evil abyss, Lord Devour insisted on taking the two supreme treasures of heaven and earth. He was almost killed by the Star Sovereign. In the end, the Soul Emperor used the soul-devouring transformation to resist the fatal attack. The two of them escaped successfully. However, this innate ability that could allow a Soul Emperor at the peak of the War God realm to resist the attack of an upper ninth-grade Star Sovereign was too heaven-defying. Even the heavens were jealous of it. Thus, the soul-devouring beast could only use this ability once in its life. After using it, it would die for sure. That year, the Soul Emperor had the strength of a peak 7th-grade Soul Emperor. That was why he had survived for 3 years before dying. But now, with Xiao Hei's strength, the Star Sovereign had become a 9th-grade Supreme Being. Thus, the reason why Xiao Hei could live for another month was because of Lord Devour's forceful use of his mind power. Lord Devour pondered for a while. A green light emitted from his beautiful hand. Then, this light slowly patted Xiao Hei's head. Not long after, Little Black's face, which was as pale as snow, slowly turned red. It was a very unhealthy kind of red. After a moment, his closed eyes suddenly opened. Although his face was a little sick, his eyes were as lively as ever. Chapter 1047. The moment Xiao Hei woke up, Yi Qinghan lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he was possessed by a murderous aura. For the first time, his face changed. It became distorted as he gazed at Xiao Hei's eyes, not saying a word. Jida and Yao Ji also had complicated feelings as they looked at Xiao Hei. Lord Devour, on the other hand, revealed a natural and loving smile. She gently patted Xiao Hei's shoulder and said softly, "After 1 hour, I will send Shui Air here." Then, Lord Devour turned around to look at Yi Qinghan, who had a ferocious face. She nodded to Yao Ji, who understood her meaning. She took her and Jida and disappeared from the room. Xiao Hei sat up and looked at Yi Qinghan's face. He forced a smile, pouted his lips, and said casually, "Big brother, why do you look at me like that? Did I, Lord Xiao Hei, become more handsome?" This joke wasn't funny, so Yi Qinghan didn't laugh. He still looked at Xiao Hei with a ferocious face, as if he was looking at his father's murderer. Xiao Hei also forced a smile. Seeing Yi Qinghan's face, he couldn't laugh anymore. Instead, he tried to avoid Yi Qinghan's eyes. "It's not fair." Yi Qinghan kept silent for a while and finally opened his mouth. His voice was a little hoarse. Besides being hoarse, there was nothing different. There was no sorrow or loneliness in his voice. It was just low and hoarse. "Big brother." Xiao Hei shook his head and laughed again. This time, he looked much more relaxed. He shrugged and said indifferently, "There's no such thing as fair or not. At that time, either I died or both of us died. If so, I will go to the 9 Nether Realm to find a way. Moreover, big brother, your life is more meaningful than mine. You're the #1 genius in the God world. Perhaps you can take revenge for me and my father. This is unfair." Yi Qinghan also shook his head slightly. His expression did not change at all as he stubbornly spoke. When he saw that Xiao Hei was about to speak again, he directly and tyrannically cut him off and said, "You, Xiao Hei, are favored by the heavens. I, Yi Qinghan, am the 7th son of the Yi family. The 7th son of the Yi family is not even comparable to a servant. If it wasn't for you, Xiao Hei, I wouldn't even know that I would be muddling through my life in that small city in the Fire Dragon continent. It's very likely that I would have already become a pile of dirt. Why do I have to take all the fame, benefits, and women along the way? Why are you always the one who helps me more? Why did you have to die to save me? This isn't fair, very unfair. Unfair, unfair." Yi Qinghan was almost roaring towards the end of his sentence. His loud roar reverberated throughout the room, causing Xiao Hei's eardrums to hurt. It also made Xiao Hei's body feel more relaxed. "Wrong. Boss, you're wrong." Xiao Hei stood up, slowly walked over, and sat down on the stone bench next to Yi Qinghan. His footsteps were very relaxed. Apart from a sickly flush on his face, he looked no different from usual. His pair of intelligent eyes were still as lively as before. He very naturally sat down, looked at Yi Qinghan with a smile, and said, "Boss, you're wrong. Your achievements today are all earned by yourself. Think about it. How many young people in the Fire Dragon continent can endure the pain of all the meridians in their body exploding? How many people can stay in the God-slaying mountain for 5 years at the age of 16? Who can break through the God-slaying mountain? Who can endure the pain of their soul being torn and walk out of the Eveline stream? Who can survive after their soul is split in two? Who can fuse the mysteries of different elements? Who can comprehend the eternity of space? Only you, boss. There's only you in this world." Yi Qinghan wanted to say something, but this time it was Xiao He who interrupted him with a smile and continued to say, "I, Xiao He, am a fatherless and motherless child. Back then, my aunt was refining that treasure of heaven and earth and threw me into the fog swamp. I was extremely lonely. Those years, I lived very hard, and I was very afraid. If you didn't summon me, I don't know if I would have gone crazy. Along the way, you've sacrificed so much, but I only used the soul-devouring beast's innate ability to help you a little. You helped me kill Li Kong, so you don't owe me anything. I've always felt that acknowledging you as my boss is the luckiest thing that has happened to me, Xiao He. Of course, if you continue to be so sentimental, I will think that everything I've done is not worth it. If you're still my boss, Xiao He, and still the young master from back then straighten your spine and avenge me. Avenge my father. This is what young masters should do." Yi Qinghan fell silent and buried his head again. Xiao He didn't say anything, but he didn't lower his head. Instead, he leaned against the wall. The two of them just sat there quietly, just like how they used to sit together in the past, looking at the sky, looking at the sea, and looking at the beautiful world of the God realm. After an hour, Yi Qinghan raised his head. His eyes were not bloodshot, and there was no malevolence on his face. Instead, his expression was calm, and not even a trace of sadness could be seen in his eyes. He patted Xiao He's shoulder, sighed deeply, and forcefully turned his head away. His hoarse voice continued to ring, "There's still 1 more month. Accompany Shui well. When the time comes, I'll send you off." "Amen." Xiao He nodded, looking at Yi Qinghan's bent back, which made him look like an old man. Then, he slowly walked out of the room. He stood up, wiping the tears from the corners of his eyes. He moved his body and stretched the muscles on his face. He even laughed to make his countenance more natural. "Xiao He." Not long after, a delicate and slightly trembling figure sounded behind Xiao He. Xiao He's body trembled slightly, and he let out a deep breath again. He turned around with a smile and hugged the graceful figure behind him. After spinning a few times in the air, he directly fell onto the bed and said with a smile, "Wife, you haven't seen me for so long. Did you miss me? I missed you so much. No, let's do it first." Xiao He was smart. Of course, he knew that Lord Devour and Yi Qinghan would hide his affairs from Shui Le. After chatting with Yi Qinghan for 1 hour, he felt much more relaxed. As he knew that he was going to die, he didn't have to worry about anything. Thus, he resumed his playful and mischievous appearance, although his movements weren't as natural as before. "Ah, you're a bad guy. Stop." When Li Shui saw Xiao He's pair of eyes that were as lively as before, her tensed heart finally relaxed. Although Xiao He's face was a little red, Li Shui didn't mind it because Lord Devour had told her that Xiao He was slightly wounded. "Don't press me. You're hurt, but you still dare to mess around. Be good and lie down." Li Shui's face showed a gleam of shame and anger. However, she didn't kick Xiao He off the bed like before. She didn't mind Xiao He's mischievous hands under her skirt. Instead, she gazed at Xiao He's face, revealing a sweet smile. "Xiao He, if you don't stop, I have a secret that I won't tell you." "What?" Xiao He was so surprised. He stopped, looking at Li Shui, who was behaving strangely. He asked skeptically, "What secret? You're so mysterious. If you're lying to me, haha, this young master will use the spear technique of the Devour family to whip you to death." "Ha!" Li Shui flipped Xiao He aside, then sat up. She adjusted her skirt, placing her hands on her smooth belly. Her face was shy and affectionate as she said softly, Xiao He, I want to give you a surprise. Don't be too excited. I'm telling you, you're going to be a father. Boom! It was like a thunderbolt from the clear sky. Xiao He's body shivered. His face blushed even redder. For the first time, his lively eyes started to tear silently. In the end, he closed his eyes tightly, and his entire body started to tremble. After a moment, he suddenly opened his eyes again, and a trembling hand moved towards Li Shui's smooth abdomen, but it stopped in midair and continued to tremble nonstop. Chapter 1048. Xiao He, what's wrong with you? Li Shui looked at Xiao He's strange behavior and was shocked. Although this was a surprise, she did not send a message to Xiao He at the start to make him happy. However, wasn't Xiao He's behavior a little too strange? Xiao He quickly came to his senses and wiped the tears on his face in a hurry. He revealed a smile and looked at Li Shui's belly. He reached out and touched it, saying carefully, No, I'm too happy. Sure, am I really going to be a father? Li Shui looked at the silly little black and pursed her lips into a smile. A motherly glow appeared on her face, causing her originally beautiful face to look even more alluring. She looked at Xiao He, who was lying on the bed with his head against her belly. She smiled and said, Why would I lie to you? Actually, after you and Big Brother Yi went to the Starry Sea, we already confirmed it. It's just that I didn't send a message to you. Xiao He, in the future, you will be an adult in the truest sense of the word. You can't be naughty. In the future? Xiao He had originally placed his face against Li Shui's smooth belly, trying to listen to the pulse of the little life in her belly. When he heard her words, his body trembled slightly again. Then he slowly turned his head and nodded vigorously. He said softly, I won't be naughty anymore. I'll listen to my wife. In the future, I won't be naughty anymore. Li Shui caressed Xiao He's head and smiled. She had heard that if a man became a father, he would become more mature. It seemed like this saying was true. Xiao He's temperament had become more mature than before. All right. Xiao He suddenly looked up at Li Shui and said, Shui, when will our child be born? Can it be born in a month? I really want to see our child. But idiot. Li Shui looked at Xiao He's hopeful face and felt that Xiao He was silly and adorable. She stretched out a hand and pointed at his forehead. I've only been pregnant for a few months. The children of divine beasts like us would normally gestate for more than 10 years. Ordinary female heavenly gods would need to gestate for 3 to 5 years. Child, the longer you stay in your mother's womb, the better your physique will be, and the smarter you will be. 10 years. Xiao He's eyes narrowed, but this time he didn't reveal any strange expression on his face. Instead, his face was filled with a brilliant smile. He suddenly leaned forward and kissed Li Shui madly. However, his hands and feet didn't move, and he could only passionately kiss her. Li Shui's beautiful face was as red as a peach blossom, and she was panting, her beautiful eyes blurred. What made Li Shui extremely astonished was that Xiao He, who was usually as thirsty as a hungry wolf, actually did not impatiently climb onto her body and do some embarrassing things this time. Instead, he climbed up from the bed, frowned, and started to wander around the room. From time to time, he would stop and murmur a few words, as if he was thinking about an extremely important matter. Li Shui sat up and looked at Xiao He in confusion. She tidied up her clothes, and after a while, she saw Xiao He was still wandering around. She couldn't help but ask curiously, Xiao He, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking about the name of our child. Xiao He turned his head and looked at Li Shui, then continued to wander. After a while, his eyes brightened, and he smiled. I've got it, Shui. If our child is a boy, he will be called Devouring Heaven, and if it's a girl, he will be called Devouring Demon. What do you think? Not bad, huh? I, Lord Xiao He, am quite knowledgeable. Li Shui held her stomach and laughed out loud, and her tears almost fell. Devouring Heaven? Devouring Demon? Only Xiao He would come up with such a name. What's wrong? Not nice? How about Devouring Heaven and devouring demon. If you really don't like it, you can name it. I'll listen to you. Xiaohei scratched his head and laughed foolishly. Li Shui'er rubbed her stomach again and looked at Xiaohei, who had indeed changed a lot. She revealed a charming smile and looked at Xiaohei lovingly. All right, we'll do as you say. If it's a boy, he will be called Devouring Heaven. And if it's a girl, she will be called Devouring Demon. Xiaohei rubbed his hands, and then his eyes brightened again. He said, Shui'er, you're pregnant now. I can ask Annie to find a few maids to serve you. You can't slack off. You must take good care of your body. All right, where are we now? Where is this place? Li Shui'er's eyes revealed a trace of worry, and she frowned. I don't know where we are, but I think we're in the space turbulence. All right. Xiaohei, what happened? Why didn't my father come in with us? Did something happen to him? You should ask Annie quickly. Xiaohei scratched his head. Of course, he couldn't tell her what happened on the Supreme Island. Just as he didn't know what to say, a voice transmitted in his head. Xiaohei, we're in the Soul Emperor Pavilion, and we're in the space turbulence now. We'll reach a safe place in about half a year. Tell Shui'er about Li Quan. She should be fine. Moreover, I've given Li Quan some things to protect her life. Don't worry about the future. Just stay with Shui'er. I'll arrange everything well. Of course, the voice came from Lord Devour. Xiaohei nodded and showed a grateful smile. Although his aunt wasn't close to him, she was really nice to him. Presumably, she would treat Shui'er and his children better in the future. Shurian walked over and hugged Li Shui'er, comforting her. Under Xiaohei's comforting, Li Shui'er calmed down. These days, she had been worried, and she was so tired because of her pregnancy. Now that she could see Xiaohei, she was relieved. After being comforted by Xiaohei, she fell asleep in his embrace. The smile on Xiaohei's face didn't disappear. Looking at the soft woman in his embrace, he caressed Li Shui'er's smooth belly again. A gleam of helplessness flashed in his eyes as he sighed deeply. Little kid, why do you need 10 years to be born? It would be great if you could be born in 1 month. The 9th floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion was spacious, and it was divided into 3 parts. Xiaohei's room and a few smaller halls were part of it. At this moment, Yao Ji had cut off all connections with the outside world, so the two of them could enjoy their last happy moments together. In the middle hall, Yi Qinghan sat silently on the main seat. Yu Qingcheng, Fireworks, Yi Sahan, Peach Blossom, and the others had all been teleported over. The whole family was gathered. However, although the hall was filled with people, no one said a word. Everyone was looking at Yi Qinghan, who was silent with his eyes closed and a solemn expression on his face. Everyone knew that something had happened. They were prepared to ask Yi Qinghan countless questions after seeing him, but at this moment, they were all silent. Even Yin Ling, who liked to pester endlessly, and Yi Qingyu, who didn't scheme at all, didn't dare ask, nor did they dare make a sound. Cherry Blossom wanted to open her mouth to break the oppressive atmosphere, but under Blue Rain's fierce glare, she shut her mouth in embarrassment. Everyone waited quietly for Yi Qinghan to speak. They all knew Yi Qinghan very well. He liked to share his wealth with his family and women, but he didn't like to share hardships. No matter what happened, he liked to silently shoulder it alone. He would hide in a corner alone, licking his wounds in solitude. In front of them, he always wore a carefree smile. He never liked to show it on his face, nor did he want them to be worried or afraid. But today he didn't choose to hide from them. Instead, it was the first time he showed such a solemn expression in front of them. They had only met for so long, and it had already been 2 hours. He hadn't said a word or even looked at them. They all knew that something major had happened, something that Yi Qinghan couldn't bear. Chapter 1049. Divine World, Ethereal Continent. Today, the air in the ethereal continent was especially oppressive. Rare black clouds floated in the sky. Although they were very faint, this was a weather that rarely appeared in hundreds of years. The low-level martial artists of the ethereal continent didn't know what was going on. The shadow of the demonic beast catastrophe had long passed. It was said that all the demons in the Star Sea had been cleared out a few days ago. The divine world was safe again. Countless people cultivated, continued to train, continued to pick up girls, and continued to visit brothels. They continued to spend large amounts of divine stones after nightfall. However, the experts of the large families on the ethereal continent all sighed as they looked at the black clouds in the sky. They all knew that the ethereal continent had changed. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before it became the Li Tao continent, an ethereal city. Jida left, but he didn't bring anyone with him. He didn't bring any of the 3,000 beauties in the luxurious palace on Ethereal Peak. However, everyone received Jida's message. The moment he received the message, Holy Sky Supremacy went to Ethereal Peak alone and took away more than 10 concubines who were willing to leave. Then, he fled far away and entered a mystic realm that only Holy Sky Supremacy knew about. Supremacy Moonchaser, Supremacy Fragrance, another Supremacy, and thousands of beauties didn't leave. They waited obediently in Ethereal City, waiting for their new master, Supremacy Li Tao. Jida's message only had one sentence. Those who were willing to wait for him could go to the mystic realm and hide for 1,000,000 years. Those who weren't willing should not resist. Otherwise, all of them would die. He wouldn't blame them. Everyone had the right to choose their own life. There were 1,000,000 ethereal army soldiers on the plaza and countless prefecture lords. Of course, there were also countless prefecture lords. However, there were still some people who didn't come. For example, Supremacy Li Quan, Darch Yu, Darch Lei Jin, and Darch Xiang, Swish. Countless figures appeared in the sky above Ethereal City. Blood Knight Monarch, who was wearing blood-red armor and had blood-red hair, was at the front. Behind him was Supremacy Li Tao, who had brown hair, and more than 10 Supremacy Island Supremacy in War God robes. Blood Knight Monarch greets all lords. Venerable Moonchaser, Venerable Fragrance, and another Venerable looked at each other. In the end, the three of them sighed and led the 1,000,000 people behind them to kneel on one knee and shout in unison. The Blood Knight Sovereign looked at the three venerables with slight disdain. Then, he gestured to Li Tao. Li Tao slowly flew out and looked at the cultivators below with a calm expression. Blood Knight's Sovereign wasn't happy, but he still decided to go through with it. Since he was here, he had to show his attitude. He said coldly, "This is Venerable Li Tian. He will be the new Misty Sovereign in the future. All of us sovereigns have agreed. Do you have any objections?" Of course, Moonchaser and the others had objections. The Misty Continent originally had 3 ninth-grade sovereigns, and they were extremely glorious. Now, it was a sovereign who was not even stronger than them. It was just that although they had complaints in their hearts, they didn't show it on their faces. Otherwise, they would have already run away like the Venerable Saint Tian. "Greetings, Monarch." The three of them bowed again, but this time, they bowed to Venerable Li Tao alone. Following that, countless manor lords and misty army soldiers also bowed down. Their respectful roars sounded out in an earth-shattering manner, giving Li Tao enough face. "All rise." Li Tao was incomparably agitated in his heart, but he had a calm expression on the surface. He knew that the Li family gained a blessing in disguise this time. But if he didn't do well, it would become a calamity again, a calamity that would exterminate the Li family. He didn't fly down and didn't enter the city lord manor that symbolized the highest authority of the Misty Continent. He just said indifferently, "Moonchaser, Fragrance, Heaven Extermination, and all the manor lords present, follow me on a trip to soul-devouring cities." Finishing, Li Tao turned his head and bowed respectfully to the Blood Knight Sovereign. "Your Excellency, I still have to trouble you to make a trip. You're too courteous. Let's go." The Blood Knight Sovereign looked at Li Tao with some appreciation. This person was very smart, knowing to make use of his help to take the Misty Continent down a notch. Moonchaser and the other two had already submitted on the surface. The Misty City's attitude was pretty good, so he couldn't suppress the three of them anymore. Hence, he chose Soul-Devouring City as the target to shock the Misty Continent. Soul-Devouring City didn't have the bustling of the past. There were much fewer people in the plaza. Occasionally, martial artists who hurried past had faces of panic and confusion. When the Blood Knight's sovereign brought a group of people and appeared in the sky above soul-devouring city, the martial artists in the city were even more horrified. Countless martial artists even started to flee out of the city. Swish! Countless martial artists flew out of the city Lord Manor. At the same time, countless black-armored soul-devouring army soldiers also flew out from the streets and houses in the city. All of them gathered in the plaza. They didn't have any expression on their faces, but their eyes were filled with fervor. Looking at the martial artists in the sky, they didn't conceal the hatred and rage in their eyes. The Blood Knight's sovereign didn't speak. Li Kong didn't speak either. He just used his peripheral vision to sweep at Moonchaser and the other two. Moonchaser and Heaven Extermination hesitated for a moment. Fragrance's eyes flashed with a trace of fervor. She immediately walked out and yelled at the martial artists in the plaza. Soul-devouring manor. Where's the person in charge? I am the new soul-devouring manor's manor lord. Everyone, what's the matter? A tall figure slowly rose into the sky. His face was incomparably handsome. Unfortunately, it was a little tanned, but it made him more manly. Emperor Yu calmly stood in the sky and didn't bow. He didn't even look at the Blood Knight's sovereign and Li Tao. Li Tao still didn't say anything. The Blood Knight's sovereign was no fool. Soul Devour City was Jia Wu's territory, and if he did anything too excessive and Jia Wu snuck back in the future, even if she didn't kill him, she could easily wipe out all of his descendants. This woman's methods were too chilling. Fragrance was momentarily at a loss for words. She glanced at Li Tao and the Blood Knight's sovereign. Seeing that they had no intention of speaking, she could only embarrassedly smile and say to Emperor Yu, "This is the Blood Knight's sovereign, and this is the new Misty sovereign, Lord Li Tao. Why aren't you coming over to greet them?" Emperor Yu didn't move. His eyes still didn't look at Li Tao or the Blood Knight's sovereign. He calmly smiled and said, "Sorry, in this life, I only greet my big sister and the Soul Emperor. When the kid sovereign first came to soul-devouring city, I didn't even greet him." Emperor Yu's words were very tactful, but they were very impolite. His meaning was very clear. Soul-devouring city didn't recognize the Blood Knight's sovereign, nor the new Misty sovereign, Li Tao. The Blood Knight sovereign heavily harumphed, expressing his dissatisfaction. However, he still didn't say anything and didn't show any signs of attacking. Li Tao's expression didn't change. Instead, he revealed a slight smile. It was a bit cold. Fragrance looked at Moonchaser and the others behind her and found that they had calm expressions, as if they were old fools in meditation. She looked at the Blood Knight's sovereign and Li Tao and found that they still didn't show any signs of speaking. She then looked at the countless soul-devouring soldiers, who didn't seem to be hiding their cold smiles. His expression became incomparably ashamed and angry. He knew that he had done a stupid thing today. However, since he was stupid, he could only continue being stupid. Therefore, he revealed a ferocious killing intent as he gritted his teeth and coldly said, "Impudent. Emperor Yu, do you want soul-devouring city to be annihilated? Do you want to die? Soul-devouring soldiers below, do you all want to die as well?" Chapter 1050. Ha! Emperor Yu's reply was a burst of unbridled laughter. This laughter reverberated throughout the entire soul-devouring city. Even a pig could hear the mockery and disdain in his laughter. Following that, the soul-devouring army below also started laughing. For a moment, the entire soul-devouring city was filled with laughter, incomparably savage laughter. The Blood Knight monarch's expression turned even uglier, but he became even more silent. Li Tao frowned slightly. Moon-chasing Sky Destroyer supremacy and the countless prefecture lords behind him looked embarrassed. Their evasive eyes revealed a tinge of shame that no one knew about. Emperor Yu pressed his hand down lightly, and all the soul-devouring army soldiers immediately stopped laughing. Emperor Yu did not look at anyone in the sky. Instead, he looked down at the soul-devouring army below him proudly. There are 400,000 soul-devouring army soldiers below. There used to be 1 million of them. They guarded the soul-devouring manor for countless years. The god bandits of the wandering sea trembled in fear at the mention of their name. During the demonic beast rampage, they went to more than 30 prefectures in a few days. More than 100,000 people died. After that, they all went to the Star Sea again and killed countless demon world beings. However, more than 400,000 of our brothers remained in the Star Sea forever. Today, if you want to kill, then kill us all in soul-devouring city. The entire soul-devouring army is here. Tell them, are you afraid of death? No. We are willing to be with soul-devouring city. What answered Emperor Yu was a series of earth-shaking but incomparably orderly shouts. The roar caused the entire Soul Eater city to tremble slightly. The voice seemed to have an inexplicable magic that shook the hearts of everyone in Soul Eater city. Even the Blood Knight monarch revealed a look of astonishment. Swish! All of a sudden, on the streets, in the rooms, in the bushes, countless figures frantically gathered at the city plaza. Countless people quickly gathered on the originally empty street. The hundreds of streets surrounding the plaza were filled with a dense mass of people. Millions of soul-devouring city citizens all gathered at the city plaza silently. Their faces were expressionless, but their eyes were burning with passion and a fearless will. The extremely large city plaza originally had hundreds of thousands of people, but now it was packed so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. No one said anything. They just sneered at Venerable Fragrance, the Blood Knight monarch, and Li Tao. Venerable Fragrance's expression became even more sinister and terrifying, while the Blood Knight monarch's brows furrowed even more. Li Tao's expression finally changed slightly, while Venerable Moonchaser and the rest became even more silent. They all turned their heads away, not daring to meet the eyes of the cultivators below. Venerable Fragrance became even more humiliated and furious. Origin energy surged from her body. Although there were millions of people below, she could kill them all alone if she wanted to. Looking at Venerable Li Tao's gloomy face, he gritted his teeth again and made up his mind, roaring angrily, "Good, good. Looks like you guys really want to die. Fortune is found in danger." Venerable Fragrance was the weakest Venerable under Gid. Now that Gid was gone, so was Venerable Heavenly Sky. Venerable Moonchaser was in charge of the law enforcement team, while Venerable Exterminate the Sky was in charge of the Misty Army. Now that Li Tao had come, he could only take a gamble and gain Li Tao's trust. Only then would he be able to become the #1 supremacy under him, the #1 supremacy of the floating mist continent. I beg Venerable Fragrance, grant me death. Emperor Yu's sneer became even thicker. Ever since he stayed behind, he never thought that he could survive. In the past, when the Soul Emperor became the soul-devouring Manor's Manor Master, he was the deputy city lord. The Soul Emperor loved to play, so he managed all the minor matters in the city. After Lord Devour took over soul-devouring city, he was still the deputy city lord. Similarly, the soul-devouring manor was still managed by him. He had invested a great deal of effort into this city, and he also viewed the soul-devouring army below as his family. Therefore, everyone could leave, but he could not. He had to accompany his city, accompany his people, and forever remain on this land. I beg Venerable Fragrance, grant me death. As Emperor Yu's voice fell, millions of martial artists shouted in unison. They were incomparably orderly, without any emotional fluctuations. There were only countless sneering faces and fiery gazes that looked death calmly in the eye. Whoosh! Suddenly, a huge teleportation array lit up. Transmission arrays were originally used for transmission, so it was normal for the transmission array to light up. But it was not normal for someone to be transmitted over at this moment. Since you want to kill, you might as well kill a few more. A faint voice rang out. A purple-haired man walked out of the transmission array. He wore purple battle armor and held a silver spear in his hand. His body did not have any aura, but there was an invisible aura that looked down on the world. Leijun! When Emperor Yu saw the transmission array light up, he knew who had arrived. He did not say anything and only looked at Leijun with a faint smile. The two looked at each other and appreciated each other's talents. They laughed at the same time. Whoosh! The teleportation formation kept flashing. Cultivators were continuously being teleported over. They were all wearing azure battle armors and wielding azure spears. After being teleported over, all of them silently flew into the air and stood in one piece. Not long after, the transmission array dimmed. However, there were already 100,000 martial artists lined up in the sky. Lei Jun's spear trembled, and he directly teleported. He stood in front of the azure armored martial artist and faintly smiled. Lei Jun has brought 100,000 Yi family soldiers. I beg Venerable Fragrance to grant me death. I beg Venerable Fragrance to grant me death. Another uniform roar rang out, and the sky above Soul Eater City shook once more. It shook Venerable Fragrance so much that she nearly fell from the sky. Wang! At this moment, the sky trembled. A beautiful figure suddenly appeared beside Lei Jun. Behind her was a pair of beautiful rainbow wings, which made her look even more noble and elegant. She did not look at anyone. She only looked at the insufferably arrogant and domineering Lei Jun and said with deep emotion, "Don't even think about leaving me behind in this life. Even if I have to go to the Netherworld realm, I will follow you." Yu Duanduan was the ruler of the Rain Butterfly race, the master of Rain Butterfly Island. Whoosh! In the distance, another transmission array lit up. A familiar figure appeared in the transmission array. It was a man. He looked very ordinary and gentle. He did not bring anyone with him. However, his figure suddenly disappeared from the teleportation formation. In the next second, he was standing in front of Lei Jun and Yudi Dun. He smiled at Venerable Fragrance, who was in front of him, and said indifferently, "Fragrance, are you going to kill me? Why didn't you call me over to watch such a lively event?" Fragrance. There were only a few people in the Misty Continent who could be called Fragrance. This man in front of her had the qualifications and strength. Venerable Li Quan. In the blink of an eye, the situation had reversed. Venerable Fragrance could have massacred the entire soul-devouring city by herself. However, she did not dare to do so even if she was given 10,000 guts. Let alone Lei Jun and Yu Duanduan. Venerable Li Quan alone could easily kill her. Venerable Fragrance's mouth moved, but in the end, she did not say anything. She was extremely embarrassed, angry, and sorrowful. Venerable Moon Chaser, Sky Destroyer, and the countless palace lords were even more ashamed. They turned around and did not dare to look over. The Blood Knight Monarch did not dare to make a move. He could easily kill these people with a single slap, but if Jia Wu and Yi Qinghan returned, the first person they would kill would definitely be him. Li Tao's smile became even wider. He waved his hand, signaling for Venerable Fragrance to retreat. He walked to the front by himself. Chapter 1051. Li Tao was very depressed. If he had the strength of a monarch, he would not hesitate to slap. But he didn't, and he knew that even if he asked Blood Knight Monarch, he wouldn't dare. Shinta Xiong gave him great glory and position, and he knew that this was compensation for the 2 dead supremacies of Li family. He also knew that Shinta Xiong's body had not fully recovered. He wanted to unify God World. On the surface, it looked like he did, but it was just in name. He was thrown by Shinta Xiong to test the waters, or rather, he was Shinta Xiong's blade. The first to attack was Floating Continent. If Li Tao succeeded in conquering the Misty Continent, then the Li family would very likely become the true master of the Misty Continent. If not, Li Tao would still be the venerable of the Star Sea, but his ranking would directly drop to the bottom. And if something happened during the process of taking it, if he caused an uproar in the Misty Continent and caused an uproar in the entire God Realm, then even if Li Tao wasn't swallowed by the people who caused the uproar, he would still be slapped to death by Shinta Xiong. Star Monarch needed someone to help him take down Floating Continent, not someone to stir up trouble for him. The situation before him, there were already signs of a riot, and if he forcefully started killing, the consequences would be unthinkable, and he might need Star Monarch to clean up the mess. Although Star Monarch said to kill anyone who didn't agree, he didn't allow him to kill millions of people, and one of them was Supremacy Li Quan, who had a huge influence in Floating Continent. So he smiled, very calmly, dispelling the surging aura that Lei Jun and Li Quan gathered. He said plainly, "I am the new floating continent monarch. Star Monarch, War God Pavilion Chief, Pavilion Master personally confirmed it. Lord Qing Shan, Ice Queen Blood Knight Monarch, and 7 other monarchs witnessed it. So I will definitely be the monarch. But I'm not here to kill today." Hearing Li Tao's unyielding words, Li Quan smiled. He was under a lot of pressure today to come here. He wasn't alone. He had Li family and Li Quan estate behind him. Li Tao's words, especially the last sentence, showed that this Li Tao was not an idiot. Today, Lei Jun's life was saved. He had made the right bet. Li Tao continued to calmly smile as he said, "I'll personally settle the enmity between the Li family, Shi Jiawu, and Yi Qinghan. You used to be their subordinates, but their crimes do not involve their relatives, let alone subordinates. I can let bygones be bygones. I just want to sit on my throne. Do you understand what I mean?" After Li Tao finished speaking, he turned silent and stared at Venerable Li Quan and the others. His attitude was very low, and his words were very clear. Venerable Li Quan took a deep look at Li Tao, his eyes revealing a trace of vigilance. Among the 3 venerables of the Li clan, although this one was the weakest, he was the most intelligent. A dog that knows how to endure silently is the one that bites the most. However, Li Tao had already made such a gesture today, giving them a way out. It could even be said that he had given them a resounding slap in the face, yet he was still speaking with a smile. Venerable Li Quan would be a fool if he didn't know how to take advantage of the situation. Thus, Venerable Li Quan was the first to cup his hands, bow slightly, and smile. "Greetings, Sovereign." Emperor Yu and Lei Jun looked at each other. Li Tao was delaying, but weren't they also delaying? If they didn't cross the line, they wouldn't be so stupid as to seek death. Thus, the 2 of them also casually cupped their hands and said, "Greetings, Sovereign." Yu Duanfei smiled faintly as he looked at the 3 of them. These 3 men, even when they were going downhill, they were still so hesitant. "Greetings, Sovereign?" Not the misty monarch. Li Tao was a venerable. What kind of sovereign could he be? "Greetings, Sovereign." Under Emperor Yu and Lei Jun's signal, the millions of citizens of Soul Eater City and the 100,000 Yi clan soldiers all cupped their hands and greeted. However, it wasn't as orderly and dignified as before, and there were even a few people who were laughing quietly. The smile on Li Tao's face didn't diminish. Since they were willing to lower their heads, it was good. Although it didn't look good lowering their heads, didn't they still have a long way to go? Venerable Li Quan, Emperor Yu, Lei Jun, and Yu Duanfei looked at each other and smiled faintly. Indeed, they still had a long way to go. The 4 of them secretly made up their minds. As long as they didn't cross the line, they would definitely live well. They would wait for the day when a 9-story treasure pavilion would tear through space and descend upon the God realm. Within a spatial crack, a 9-story treasure pavilion was currently protected by a layer of white light. It was rapidly shuttling through countless spatial blade streams and spatial whirlpools. It was lonely and persistent, advancing towards an unknown goal that seemed impossible to reach. Soul Emperor Pavilion's 9th floor. There was a side hall with countless bookshelves. There were dozens of huge bookshelves, and on top of them were countless books. These were all collected by the Soul Emperor over countless years from countless continents and material planes. At this moment, there was a woman standing on top of the bookshelf. She was wearing a green robe and had waist-length green hair. She quickly flipped through the books, and her beautiful willowy eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Her beautiful eyes were filled with sadness, making one's heart ache. In a corner of the small hall, there was a white jade round table and several chairs. There were 3 people sitting on the chairs. One was a woman wearing a fiery red robe, leisurely drinking tea. There was also an incomparably enchanting woman. Her eyebrows were furrowed, and she looked down at the teacup in her hands, lost in thought. The last person was a middle-aged man. He was incomparably refined and elegant. However, he didn't seem to be able to sit still. From time to time, he would glance at the woman flipping through the books on the bookshelf. His eyes flashed with impatience and desire. Kids! The red-clothed woman put down the teacup and softly said, "Don't worry, calm down. Life and death are decreed by fate, and riches and honor are determined by the heavens. There are some things that cannot be forced." Kid pursed his lips, turned around, and bitterly smiled. "It's already been 20 days. I've already flipped through all of M.O. Xiaoxiao's books twice. How come there isn't anything I can do?" Sigh. If Xiaohei dies, Shui Air will be in so much pain that she won't want to live. Xiaohan will probably never be able to recover. The enchantress lifted her head, sighing faintly. After using the soul-devouring transformation, Xiaohei's body will wither unceasingly. It doesn't look like it, but his vitality will disappear quietly. The divine crystal will crack slowly. Once the divine crystal explodes, the soul will leave the body. Once the soul leaves the body, it will vanish in just a blink of an eye. It's an unsolvable situation. Sigh. Lord Devour's face was calm, and his emotionless voice arose. "It's the fate of this father and son. One died to save me, and the other died to save Yi Qinghan. It's my fault. I shouldn't have let Xiaohei get out of the Fire Dragon continent that year. M.O. Xiaoxiao, don't check anymore. Don't waste time." M.O. Xiaoxiao didn't answer Lord Devour. Instead, she held a book, reading it carefully. Her two beautiful eyebrows furrowed more tightly. All of a sudden, her eyebrows unfurrowed, and her face beamed a mesmerizing smile. However, her smile hadn't fully bloomed yet, and it turned into a forced smile. "What?" Lord Devour's body shivered. His eyes were as sharp as knives, shooting at M.O. Xiaoxiao the moment her eyebrows unfurrowed. Swoosh! The enchantress and kid stood up at the same time, their fiery eyes gazing at M.O. Xiaoxiao. M.O. Xiaoxiao was a soul cultivator. Moreover, she was an unusual soul cultivator. She had used a soul cultivator's method to break through to the venerable realm. She had been here for 20 days, and her eyebrows had always been furrowed. But now, they were relaxed. M.O. Xiaoxiao walked out. Her beautiful eyes were so fiery, but the corners of her mouth were bitter. She pursed her lips and said, "Madam, there's a way to save Master Xiaohei. But the chance is slim, and it's extremely difficult." Chapter 1052. Say it. Lord Devour jolted up, his body shivering as he gazed at M.O. Xiaoxiao. Xiaohei was the Soul Emperor's son, which meant that he was her son. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, she would risk her life to save him. "My lord, you know that after using the soul-devouring transformation, Xiaohei's bodily functions will start to fade. His divine crystal also began to crack. When the divine crystal completely exploded, when the divine crystal explodes completely, his soul will leave his body. Although I don't know if it will be sucked into the 9 nether realm, Xiaohei's soul will vanish in the divine world. Once the soul vanishes, this person will die." M.O. Xiaoxiao said slowly, and the others didn't dare to breathe loudly. In the divine world, the one who had the deepest understanding of the soul wasn't Monarch Yinran, who had reached the 5th level of soul quietness, but the one in front of them. Although Monarch Yinran's soul had reached the 5th level, it was by chance. In fact, her soul attainment wasn't that high, and the one in front of them was still at the 1st level of God Emperor realm. She was the first genius in the divine world who had reached the venerable realm with her soul cultivation. The three of them didn't say anything. M.O. Xiaoxiao paused for a while and then continued. "Xiaohei's divine crystal is broken. No one can change that. In other words, Xiaohei's body is finished. To save him, we have to start with his soul. First, we have to keep his soul from vanishing. Then, we will find a suitable body for him to possess." Keep his soul from vanishing? Lord Devour and Jida exchanged looks, both of them surprised. This idea was feasible in theory, but could it be kept? The soul was the root of a human being. When a person's body died, the soul would leave the body. A soul without a body was like a flower that had left the soil. It would wither and vanish instantly. Moreover, even if it could be kept temporarily, what kind of energy could keep his soul from withering and vanishing? The soul wasn't like anything else. It couldn't absorb ordinary energy. It needed the original life energy to keep it from vanishing. Every warrior had the original life energy, and every living creature had it. However, even if Lord Devour could capture countless warriors and creatures, he didn't know how to transfer their original life energy to Xiao Hei's soul. Lord Devour knew that even Mo Xiao Xiao couldn't do it. My lord, you've forgotten a treasure. Mo Xiao Xiao saw the skepticism in Lord Devour's and the other's eyes. He smiled and said, "Sir, did you forget that little Han has a strange saber?" There was a strange life form inside the saber. Most importantly, little Han can allow that life form to continuously maintain its vitality. Although this is very difficult, this is the only way. Slaughter God Blade. Artifact Soul Spectre. Lord Devour screamed in surprise. The hot light in her eyes illuminated the entire hall. Her eyes moved many times, and after a while, she looked so thrilled as she screamed. That's a good idea. It was definitely feasible. That nether was an incomparably strange life form, completely different from the transcendent artifact's artifact soul. He had simple intelligence, and most importantly, he could devour the creatures of the demon realm, seizing their life force to replenish his own energy and strengthen himself. I didn't think of that. As long as Xiao Hei's soul was moved there, Xiao Hei could devour that specter. Then, Xiao Hei's soul would have a place to reside. Moreover, little Han could continuously kill the devils to replenish Xiao Hei's energy and stabilize himself. This idea is feasible. It's feasible. Xiao Xiao, you done a great service this time. After a moment of bewilderment, Jida and Yao Ji were ecstatic. Jida couldn't help but rub his hands. Although this idea looked complicated, and there were many difficulties, at least there was hope, wasn't there? Although Yao Ji was also ecstatic, her eyes had a little bit of worry. My lord! Mo Xiao Xiao didn't look happy when she received Lord Devour's compliment. Instead, she forced a smile and said, "My lord, there are many important things. If we don't do a good job, Xiao Hei's soul will perish." Lord Devour's face calmed down, but the excitement in her eyes didn't diminish. As long as there was a chance, she would do her best. She nodded her head solemnly and said, "Speak." Mo Xiao Xiao pondered for a moment and said, "First, when Xiao Hei's soul is extracted, we must ensure that he doesn't perish. Second, we must think of a way to suppress and weaken the specter in the Slaughter God Blade. Otherwise, before Xiao Hei can devour him, he might be devoured by the specter. Third, because Xiao Hei's soul has left his body, even with the Slaughter God Blade's protection, Xiao Hei's soul energy will be depleted very quickly. Thus, we must continuously kill the evil demon realm beings for him to devour to replenish his energy. Right now, we are in the space turbulence. How can we kill so many evil demon realm beings? Also, Xiao Hei's soul has just come out, so it must be very weak. If we want him to completely stabilize, we will need a large amount of life force. After we leave the divine world, if we want to kill a large amount of evil demon realm beings, we must go to the 9 nether devil realm. As expected, it's extremely difficult. Lord Devour became silent, but Yao Ji sighed deeply. She finally understood what Mo Xiao Xiao meant when she said that the chances were slim and extremely difficult. The first and second points were not too difficult. Lord Devour's restrictions were very high, and together with Mo Xiao Xiao's strong soul cultivation, it should not be a big problem. The most important point was the third point. If they were still in the divine world, this point would be easy. They could just let Yi Qinghan kill all the evil demons in the baleful Yin stream a few hundred times. Then, they could kill a large number of evil demon realm beings and let Xiao Hei devour them easily. Jida was a little confused. He frowned and said, "Lord, aren't there always evil demon realm beings tearing space from the 9 nether devil realm to the divine world? Logically, they should travel through the space turbulence before tearing space in the divine world, right? As long as we intercept them halfway, wouldn't that be easy?" We don't need to go to the nine-nethered devil realm, right? Lord Devour and Yao Ji looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Jita did not understand these things, but they did. In the past, they had sat in the Soul Emperor Pavilion with the Soul Emperor to travel through countless planes in the space turbulence. There were many things that the divine world didn't know. Lord Devour shook his head. We can't intercept them. Although the evil demon realm is the biggest plane near the divine world, they don't go through the space turbulence to get to the divine world. They go through a material plane in the divine world. Moreover, there are 10 devil monarchs guarding that material plane. The two of us are too powerful, so we can't get in. If little Han goes alone, he will die. 10 devil monarchs. Jita looked bitter, sighing deeply. Then, the nine-nether devil realm has more devil monarchs, right? We can't go to the nine-nether devil realm. The nine-nether devil realm is 10 times bigger than the divine world. There are at least several hundred devil monarchs, and there are at least 10 devil monarchs at the 9th grade. Lord Devour also sighed deeply. The four of them were silent. Without the creatures of the evil demon realm to kill, Xiaohei wouldn't have any energy to replenish. Even if his soul could be preserved temporarily, he would still perish in the end. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if Xiaohei's soul could be preserved temporarily, it would be extremely difficult to find a suitable body for him to resurrect. Jita understood. His face darkened as he sighed. Mo Xiao Xiao, you're right. It's theoretically possible to save Xiaohei, but it's too difficult. It's even harder than getting lost in the space turbulence to find a way home. Save him, no matter how difficult it is. As long as there is a chance, we must save him. At this time, a resolute and ecstatic voice came from the door in the corner of the hall. Then, a blue shadow dashed toward them like lightning. Chapter 1053. Everybody was surprised by Yi Qinghan's sudden appearance. However, Lord Devour nodded faintly because he was the one who had sent Yi Qinghan a message. Xiaohei had to be saved. The Slaughter God Saber belonged to Yi Qinghan, and only he could use it. Of course, he needed to discuss with him. These days, Yi Qinghan had been sitting in the main hall. He didn't disturb Xiaohei or look for Lord Devour. He was depressed and dispirited. He thought that since the Soul Emperor had died, Xiaohei couldn't be saved. However, he had received Lord Devour's message. Moreover, when he arrived, he heard that Xiaohei could be saved. Of course, his mood was stirred up. Recently, he had been thinking, if Xiaohei died, how would he face Li Shuai-er? Firework had told him about Li Shuai-er's pregnancy. These days, he had been thinking, if Xiaohei died and Xiaohei's child was born, how would he explain it to Xiaohei's child? Could it be that your father had died to save me? At this moment, he had dashed in at his fastest speed. His body was shivering, and the light in his eyes could scare a low-level warrior to death. However, he didn't ask anything. He just looked at Lord Devour. Since Lord Devour had sent him here, he must have a solution. As long as there was a chance, he had to fight for it. Lord Devour didn't say anything. He just looked at Mo Xiao Xiao. Although reviving Xiaohei was difficult, he still had to do it. As for how far he could go, he would see when the time came. Even if he could let Xiaohei's soul live for one more day, it would be good enough. Mo Xiao Xiao quickly explained to Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's eyes became brighter. When Mo Xiao Xiao finished, Yi Qinghan patted the round table in front of him. He looked at Lord Devour resolutely and said, "My lord, you can arrange everything. My lord, I'll leave everything else to you. If it really doesn't work, I'll kill my way to the netherworld demon world alone. Xiaohei must be saved." Yi Qinghan, survived even though it was a situation of certain death on the Supreme Island. I don't believe anyone can take my life. Since the heavens have arranged for such a perverted thing like the specter to appear, it means that Xiaohei definitely won't die. We can definitely save him. All right. Lord Devour nodded forcefully. A gleam of insanity appeared on his face. A malicious gleam flashed in his eyes as he said in a low voice, "If we can't do it, I'll go with you to the 9 Serenities demon world. With the Soul Emperor Pavilion, we can move freely through the chaotic space basin. If we plan properly, it might not necessarily be a situation of certain death. Count me in. Jita's loud and clear voice also resounded. It was incomparably firm. The corner of his mouth curled into a sneer as he said, "The netherworld demonic world has been attacking the divine world for so long and has killed billions of its citizens. However, the divine world has never retaliated. The three of us will represent the divine realm and teach the demon realm a painful lesson. Once we are strong enough, we will fight our way back to the divine world." Lord Devour's face was radiant. It seemed that Jita and Yi Qinghan's words had stirred up his fighting spirit. He directly ordered, "Little Han, you go and talk to Xiao He. Also, tell Li Shui that he will have to face some things sooner or later. Tell him that we will never give up on him. Tell him to be at ease. Later come here. We will plan properly. Jita, you go to the first layer of the illusory palace and comfort the warriors that we have brought here this time. Yao Ji, Mo Xiao Xiao, follow me. I will arrange an altar and design a high-level restriction to let Xiao Hei's soul enter the slaughter god's saber smoothly. We will try our best to save Xiao Hei. Then we will think of a way to return to the divine world. Shen Tu Xiong, I will kill you." Under Lord Devour's arrangement, everybody's fighting spirit was high. Even Lord Devour, who looked like a living dead person, seemed to have a second spring. Although there was still a long way to go to save Xiao Hei and return to the divine world, they all had a goal. As long as they had a clear direction and worked hard, they might succeed one day. Of course, it was also possible that all of them would die. However, everybody was very confident. Not only did they have the #1 soul cultivator in the divine world, but they also had the #1 freak in the history of the divine world. There was still hope. A group of people was sitting in the illusory palace. Most of them were the soul-devouring city's senior elders, the fiery dragon city's senior elders, and Lan Yu's parents. These days, Lord Devour and the others did not appear. Fireworks and the others had quietly teleported away. The beautiful scenery around them had also become dull, and everyone's mood began to become incomparably pessimistic. They had left the divine world, where they had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and their future was uncertain. They did not know if they could return to the divine world in this lifetime. Perhaps they would die in a foreign land. Buzz! When Jito appeared in the illusory palace, everybody's heart shivered. Their eyes locked on Jita, but no one dared to ask anything. However, the anticipation in their eyes was obvious. Jita's eyes scanned the crowd, and then he said casually, "Don't resist. I will bring you to the first floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. I will give you an explanation in a while." Everybody nodded. Then, Jita sent a message. Yao Ji transported Jita and all the warriors in the illusory palace to the first floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. There were many warriors in the first floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. There were about 70 to 80,000 people. They were all low-level warriors that Lord Devour had given the soul-devouring jade talismans to. There were God Emperor Realm warriors, King God Realm warriors, and even Heavenly God Realm warriors. However, all of them were the geniuses and elites of the soul-devouring city. These warriors were more worried and panicked than the senior elders in the illusory palace. They had come to this place inexplicably. Moreover, none of the senior elders had appeared, let alone Lord Devour. They did not know where they were or what had happened. At this moment, when they saw Jida and all the senior elders of the soul-devouring city and Flame Dragon City, they all stood up in an orderly manner. Jida did not speak. He just sent another message to Yao Jida to activate the restrictions of the Soul Emperor Pavilion to simulate the chaotic space flow outside. Tens of thousands of warriors jumped in fright. Countless people were in an uproar, and many more were panicking. The senior elders in the illusory palace were all silent, waiting for Jida's explanation. Jida did not speak. He waited for everyone to adapt to the situation outside and gradually calm down. Then he said, "I can tell you clearly that we have left the divine world. In the chaotic space flow, we were chased out of the divine world by the star monarch like dogs. Because if we don't leave, everyone will die. I can also tell you clearly, it is very likely that you will never be able to return to the divine world in your lifetime." The warriors below were even more panicked. Their faces were full of fear, especially some of the low-level warriors. Their faces were even paler. There were even some senior elders who had already guessed some things. After confirming it, they could not stay calm. Quiet. This time, Jita was silent for a long time. After half a day, he shouted in an extremely overbearing voice, "Our destination this time is a completely sealed parallel space. Or rather, a mystic realm that is not connected to the divine world, the reincarnation mystic realm. Where will you reach in half a year? Lord and the Soul Emperor have explored that place many years ago. It is even bigger than the floating continent. Moreover, the population is huge. There are humans and foreign races, but the strongest experts are only at the venerable realm. Moreover, they are Lord's subordinates. We will settle down there, and you will become the rulers and managers of that place. Because that mystic realm is extremely hidden and not connected to other planes, you will be very safe there." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.